Let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Senator Tom UMBERG, and I am very pleased to be here in Long Beach. The purpose of this hearing is to show off Long Beach's new City Hall. I know the mayor would appreciate that. Before we get to the panel members, what I'd like to do is I'd like to recognize the mayor of Long Beach, Mayor Robert Garcia. Mayor Garcia, did you want to say a few words?
Well, thank you, Senator. And I want to, of course, first welcome some great friends and, of course, leaders in our state that are working on very important issues, but especially one that interests us all very much, which is the census. I want to first welcome you to our new Long Beach Civic Center. This is one of three buildings that are currently already built as part of the Civic Center. This is our City Hall building. Right across is our Harbor Department, which is part of the city, our port. And then our new Billie Jean King Central Library, which is just down the way. And soon, in between these structures will be a great park for the community, as well as some housing, much of which will be affordable. So we're excited about this project, and thank you for being here at the Civic Center. I want to just first say, on behalf of the council and all of us here in Long Beach, we want to thank you for the incredible work that's happening around the census. We've been telling our census team here at the city that there is no bigger issue in 2020 than for us to ensure that everyone is counted. And the ramifications, as we all know, that will affect everything that we do. All of the funding mechanisms and programs are critical for us to get the services that we need. And a good count is not just about representation, it's about funding, it's about equity, it's about ensuring that people get the social services that they need, and it's making sure that we know who completely is a part of our community. I will share, as you all know, that we are incredibly concerned about our harder to count communities. We are incredibly concerned about ensuring that all people, including those that are undocumented in our community, are a part of our census count. And we're very grateful to the state for the significant, I really think is significant funding and support that has come down from the governor and the legislature. We want to be partners. I am very proud. There's a lot of folks that are here in the audience that I recognize that are part of our complete count team. I think Long Beach is a great model. We have a complete team. We have a broad coalition of community organizations and labor and business and our nonprofits and government that are working together to ensure that everyone is counted. And the last thing I'll say is I was reading an article this morning in the paper, and I do know that while a lot of our larger cities seem to be well organized, there is still need, I think, up and down the state from some smaller communities, some communities with large, harder to count populations that don't seem to have yet even a coordinator within their city to help with the census. And so I'm really hoping that we're not just broadly looking at our larger cities, but that every single person up and down the state gets counted. And so again, just thank you for being here in Long Beach. Senator UMBERG, we're very grateful you represent a part of our city. And to everyone else, thank you. Welcome to Long Beach.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Garcia. And Mayor, I want to applaud you, but I also want to thank you for leading by example. You've been a great example for other community leaders, other mayors around the state of California in terms of both the importance of the census and the investment of both personnel and treasure into making sure that we do get a complete count. And so on behalf of, I'm going to take the opportunity to thank you on behalf of both committees for your leadership.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. We're pleased to be able to hold this joint meeting of the Assembly Select Committee on the Census and the Senate Select Committee on the 2020 United States Census. I'm most grateful for other committee co-chairs being here. Assemblymember Mark Berman from up north, from Menlo Park, recently moved to Menlo Park, is that right? Yeah, 2 weeks ago. And Senator Richard Pan from Sacramento, and our esteemed colleague, Elena Durazo, here from Los Angeles. Before we begin, I'm going to ask if the members here of the committee, and I think we're going to be joined by Senator Lena Gonzalez at some point in time here today. If members of the select committees would like to make opening statements, let me first turn to Senator Pan, and then to Assemblymember Berman, and then to our colleague Senator Durazo.
All right, well, thank you very much, Senator UMBERG, and appreciate your continued partnership as co-chair of the Senate Select Committee on the 2020 Census. I want to thank Mayor Garcia and the people of the city of Long Beach for welcoming us here to have this hearing today. And I want to thank all the witnesses who are joining us today for our fourth joint hearing on the 2020 Census. Our past hearings have provided a general overview of the California Complete Counts program operations, strategy, and funding. And in fact, our most recent hearing focused on language access. This hearing, we're going to be hearing from both our Los Angeles and Orange County partners to learn more about outreach strategy in this particular region. But I think more specifically, are also interested as we are approaching really the census when it will happen. I mean, we're just months away. Think about it, it's not that far away. To be sure that we have the appropriate interface between the people on the ground and the community, the local entities like the counties and the other partners and the ACVOs and the state, and to be sure that we have clear lines of expectations and lines of responsibility between each of the different entities. I realize that may be different in different areas. I think I appreciate that the mayor of Long Beach brought up that perhaps in some cities where there are more organizations and people have been working out longer may need less help from, let's say, state or regional entities, whereas other communities may need more assistance. But what we want to be sure, though, is especially when we talk about the hard to count, we can't let people fall in the gaps because of organizational problems that we have. So I'm eager to hear both what's happening here. I won't call it a microcosm, given how big LA and Orange County are. It's a macrocosm of the state. But I think this hearing will hopefully set the two counties as examples of how this is all starting to come together in preparation for the count in April. It's, again, not that far away. So again, I really appreciate this opportunity to hear about how this is going, how we're going to reach the hard to count, how we're going to reach the variety of different communities we need to count in order to be sure we have a complete census. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the chair of the Assembly Committee and my good friend, Assemblymember Berman. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pan and Senator UMBERG and to Mayor Garcia and the City of Long Beach for hosting us. As we all know, the state has committed considerable statewide planning and resources towards the achievement of a complete and accurate census count in California. However, while planning and resources are important, they aren't enough. We know that success will be decided by what is actually achieved at the grassroots level. How well we do in reaching a complete count will be determined neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street, and door by door. If the census effort were a basketball game, and I know basketball is cool again in the LA Long Beach broader area, then we'd be entering the third quarter right now. Basketball is rough in Northern California right now. It's nice to be down here. We'd be entering the third quarter right now. The first quarter was spent identifying the challenges, developing relationships, and building a plan. The last 6 months, the second quarter, was a bit more operational as we've begun the on-the-ground work. But as we enter the third quarter, the 3 months leading up to Census Day, it's critical that we pause, we evaluate what has worked, what hasn't worked, and what new challenges have come up that we didn't anticipate earlier, and improve our plans before moving forward. So it's kind of similar to what coaches and a team might do at halftime. For example, today we will discuss how to solve an urgent need for more census enumerators who serve an essential role in contacting our hard-to-count communities. While enumerator recruitment and hiring technically falls under control of the U.S. Census Bureau, this is quickly becoming a risk to the entire success of the census, which is a problem for all of us. I hope to hear that our census partners at the state, local, and community level will step up to help get this effort back on track so that we can all accomplish our goals. Similarly, this is an opportunity to learn about what is working in Long Beach or Los Angeles or Orange County and see if those efforts can be replicated in other communities across California. If we're going to accomplish this, if we are truly going to critically evaluate our progress and make the improvements necessary to achieve a complete count, then this must be a time for open and honest communications, freely given cooperation, and expanded inclusion, especially to potential contributors who are still on the sidelines. So it's my hope that today's frank and honest conversations will help us in that effort.
Thank you, Assemblymember Berman. And now let me turn to our colleague, Senator Durazo.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Umberg and my other brothers up here. I just want to mention Senator Umberg and I were on the Senate Budget Subcommittee, and I chaired that subcommittee number 4, where we had a lot of testimony come before us from organizations, community organizations, from really small rural towns in Central California to the larger cities. And what I remember distinctly in our conversations, which was why we pushed and added an additional $30 million to the original proposed budget, were a few things that stand out in my mind. One is that the media and communications strategy was not going to be limited to the usual maybe 1 or 2 or 3 languages, that there was going to be a serious effort to getting into building language capacity in some of our smallest areas in the state. So language capacity and the use of media, very, very local media outlets and communications methods had to be used, and that was one reason why we needed to push for additional funding. The other is examples of the trust messengers. The trust is built up in certain areas, which is why I was pushing for schools to get more funding. There's not a single community in the state that doesn't have a school. There's not a single community in the state where parents don't trust the teachers and the administrators. They rely on them, they count on them. And so communicating a message of importance and urgency on the census comes more powerfully through these messengers that are trustworthy, alongside, of course, our community-based activists, our churches of all faiths. There's other ways as well, but I just wanted to emphasize those as some examples. Today, I hope to get to 2 things. Where are we? Where do we stand? And what do we need to do in the remaining short time before the census actually starts hitting our communities and our residents? I appreciate that there could be a lot of speeches on the importance of the census, but I think we're past that. Everybody knows how important the census is. What I really want to hear today is, where are we? What do we need to know? It's urgent. We're really down, as Assemblymember Berman says, we're really down to the last critical moment. So I hope that, and I intend to listen as much as possible, and I hope all these issues are covered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Durazo. And we're pleased to be joined by Long Beach's own Senator, Senator Gonzalez. Senator Gonzalez, welcome.
Thank you, and you'll have to pardon my sickness. I've got a little bit of a cold, but I'm really happy to be here, and thank you to Senator Umberg and Penn and Assemblymember Berman and Senator Durazo for having me. I'm not on the committee, but it's really great to be here, especially representing the 33rd Senate District that encompasses most of Long Beach and Southeast LA, where we know is the 3rd to be affected relative to the census and the numbers. So in addition to the importance, absolutely, we want to make sure we're on the same consistency and messaging, and that we're doing everything we can for our communities. So thank you very much again for having me here.
Well, thank you all. It's 100 days until the census really begins. I shouldn't say it that way, because the preparation and the anticipation and the planning began quite some time ago, but until the actual starting gun sounds, it's 100 days. So in the next 100 days, a tremendous amount of effort and a tremendous number of resources, both devoted by the state as well as local communities, to making sure we get a complete count. I know Ms. Kadagi has heard me. I know she's going to testify a little later on, mentioned several times that one of our concerns, one of my concerns, is to make sure that we have accountability, so that all the resources that are going to be poured into this effort are going to be used most efficiently as is possible. And so today I'm going to ask questions with respect to metrics, questions with respect to accountability, questions with respect to transparency, and how we can make sure that we get a complete count, and we make sure that the taxpayers, that their funds with which they entrust us are spent efficiently. So, having said that, let me now turn to the first panel. We're pleased to have, let me announce who's going to be here. From Los Angeles County, Avianna Uribe, Chief Executive Officer, Strategic Integration Branch. From the City of Los Angeles, Maria de la Luz Garcia, Director of the Census 2020 Initiative from the Los Angeles Mayor's Office of Budget and Innovation. Also, City of Long Beach, Kevin Jackson, Deputy City Manager, City of Long Beach. From Orange County, Molly Nichelson, the Public Information Officer on behalf of the CEO of the County of Orange. And from the City of Santa Ana, our own Daisy Perez, Senior Management Assistant. So let me begin with Ms. Uribe. If you'd like to kick it off, I'd be grateful. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Chairman UMBERG, Chairman Pan, Chairman Berman, and members of the committee. I am with LA County Chief Executive Office. Thank you for the opportunity to share the county's efforts to educate and encourage our residents to participate in the census. Today, I will be addressing how LA County, the hardest county in the nation, plans to meet the challenges we face with the census. We've already documented our challenges, so now is the time for action, and thanks to the support of the state legislature and the California Complete Count Office, we have the resources and support needed to launch LA County's 2020 Census Education and Outreach Campaign. The 2020 census was always going to be a major challenge, which would require collaboration and strong partnerships. As mentioned in past testimony to the committee, coordination with partners locally, regionally, and statewide has been a cornerstone of the county's planning efforts. As outreach efforts move forward into 2020 and are implemented, the county will continue to work closely with our partners, including the City of LA, Long Beach, California Community Foundation, LA Regional Census Table, the State Census Office, and the U.S. Census Bureau, and a variety of key partners, including cities, schools, higher education, businesses, chambers, and unions. Beginning in early 2020, the county will launch a local, comprehensive, multilingual media, marketing, and community outreach engagement campaign with a focus on our hard-to-count populations. The plan will consist of paid, earned, and ethnic media, digital toolkits, live branded events, mobile census action kiosk, and targeted messaging highlighting local county programs that rely on census data. The size and scale of our campaign is directly dependent on financial resources and coordination with the state's own media and marketing campaign. The county looks forward to continued coordination with the state in that aspect. The county recognizes that one of the most significant resources are our county departments and our workforce. With over 36 county departments and 113,000 employees, collectively we have the capacity and the resources to reach our 10 million residents and educate them on the importance of the census. For example, the Department of Public Social Services touches nearly 3.5 million clients. Many of them also cover our hard-to-count populations. County departments to date have submitted outreach plan, developed unique strategies targeting our hard-to-count population, and will incorporate census messaging in their daily interaction with clients. Whether a resident is receiving public health services at a clinic or assessing the variety of social services our county has to offer, our dedicated workforce will educate and motivate residents in the places and spaces they visit. In January 2020, we will also launch the County Census Champion Program, encouraging all our employees to take the Census Pledge to ensure their households, families, friends, and communities are counted. The county is administering approximately 2/3 of its $9.4 million allocation from the state for outreach efforts in our 67 cities and 45 unincorporated areas that have hard-to-count communities. Funding allocations were based on data measures developed by both the U.S. Census Bureau and the state. The county is contracting directly with two of our largest hard-to-count cities who are here with us today, Los Angeles and the City of LA. We gave the remaining cities the option to either pool their resources with the county and be eligible for a complement of services, including digital media toolkits, direct mail campaigns, or earned and paid media outreach. For those cities that choose to take their funding allocations, They can develop their own outreach plans, but they have to follow state and county requirements. This is to speak to certain cities are actually kind of more poised to implement census outreach, so we wanted to kind of be mindful of that and give cities the option. Due to the digital divide that still exists and limited access to broadband internet impacting our hard-to-count populations, the county, together with the city, developed a robust listing of potential census action kiosk and questionnaire assistance centers, which are locations where the public can access an internet-enabled device to fill out the census or get their questions about the census answered. County locations will serve as questionnaire assistance centers and be staffed by trained county employees. Given the recent state-issued guidelines regarding CAKs and QACs issued by the state, we'll have to probably make modifications to that program according to how we originally envisioned it. The countywide Complete Count Committee, co-led by the county and city of LA, have been engaging various sectors. Higher Education Subcommittee developed a toolkit for outreach to students and school administrators, and we're proud to say that was actually shared statewide. We will also be developing and distributing a toolkit with ideas for businesses of all sizes on how to incorporate the census into their activities early next year. We'll be sharing that with our partners in local cities. We're working closely with our unions, including SEIU, to conduct outreach. In coordination with the Los Angeles Mayor's Office, last week we held a briefing with the Counselor Corps offices in LA County to bring them up to speed on our local planning efforts. Together with First Five and the LA County Office of Education, we also convened our state partners and local partners to discuss and share outreach targeting our 0 to 5 population and our K through 12. For the county, these are the following key issues moving forward. Counting the homeless population. LA County has the highest number of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness in the nation, and as such, counting the population will be a major challenge under the Census Bureau's current planned operation. Key partners including the City of LA, Long Beach, as well as LA Homeless Services Authority and CCF and the State Census Office have met with the Census Bureau to learn more about their process and how we can work together to address structural barriers to counting this population. The county is appreciative that the state yesterday issued their final requirements and guidelines for the CAKs and QACs. The county will continue to work with the state to comply with these guidelines to host these locations. The total number of locations is dependent on this. Over the next 14 weeks, it'll be critical for the recruitment of applicants to be hired as enumerators with positions for the U.S. Census Bureau. To assist the Census Bureau with this efforts, our own county department, Workforce Development, Aging, and Senior Services, will be conducting 6 recruiting and pre-screen events this month with American Job Centers of California. These events, in partnership with the Census Bureau, being held in hard-to-count areas, with one being organized specifically to recruit veterans. I also want to note that we're working closely with the City of Long Beach and LA to also kind of help support these efforts to hire enumerators. The county and CCF will continue to work with the state's communications office and media contractor on coordinating our media plans. We look forward to receiving the state's specific local media plans, given the substantial effort necessary to operationalize these programs in the region. We understand that the planning for the 2020 census is a fluid process, and we respectfully request that the state continues to consider additional support for new or unanticipated local needs in LA County, such as outreach to the homeless, additional security and language access measures at our questionnaire assistance centers and kiosk, additional enumerator recruitment, and unforeseen challenges during the non-response follow-up period. In closing, we recognize the importance of our local efforts and how they will impact political representation and federal funding for the next decade. We appreciate the state's commitment to ensuring a complete and accurate count in Los Angeles County, and look forward to continuing to work closely with our friends at the state. Thank you.
Thank you. And with my co-chair's permission, what I'd like to do is have the various panelists testify and save our questions to the end. All right, there seems to be consensus. Thank you very much. Next, Ms. Maria de la Luz Garcia from the City of Los Angeles. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Chairmans UMBERG, PAN, and BERMAN, and members of the committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you an update on the City of Los Angeles's outreach efforts for the 2020 census. I'd like to thank the Governor's Office and the California State Legislature for investing a record-setting amount of funds that has enabled our outreach efforts. The City of Los Angeles began preparing for 2020 a full 3 years ahead of the census. Among Mayor Garcetti's first actions was to issue Executive Directive 21, reestablishing the Office of the Census, instructing all city departments to designate a census liaison and to develop action plans for conducting Census 2020 outreach. The core premise of our approach is based on collaboration from the bottom up. For the first time in Los Angeles' modern history, we partnered with the County of Los Angeles to form one single local complete count committee to coordinate outreach efforts, avoid duplication, identify gaps, and leverage resources. Since establishing the CCC, we have worked hand in hand with all of our partners, County of Los Angeles, the City of Long Beach, California Community Foundation, Los Angeles Unified School District, colleges, universities, businesses, and LASA, to launch a comprehensive and coordinated outreach campaign in the City of Los Angeles that aligns with the state's outreach efforts. As the 2020 census approaches, the City of Los Angeles will be focusing its work in 6 areas. 1, recruiting, training, and deploying a legion of volunteers who we are calling Census Goodwill Ambassadors that are themselves considered hard to count. Our volunteers will lead peer-to-peer outreach by organizing and hosting events within their networks and neighborhoods at Census Action kiosks and during our Get Out the Count canvassing efforts. We had a goal of recruiting 400 Census Goodwill Ambassadors, and I'm happy to report that we have already exceeded that goal. To date, we have recruited and trained 679 volunteers through more than 20 training sessions across the city. Thanks to the generous support of the Roth Family Foundation and the Mayor's Fund for Los Angeles, we have been able to provide volunteer appreciation gifts to volunteers and mini grants to organizations, which I believe has helped to boost turnout at our recruitment and training events. Our program is currently on hiatus for the holidays, but will resume after the start of the new year. 2, establishing Census Action kiosks in city facilities where people can comfortably and securely fill out their census questionnaire. We have identified a total of 195 potential CAC locations in city facilities, and over 900 have been identified countywide, thanks to the partnership that we have with the County of Los Angeles, the City of Long Beach, and our community partners. The City of Los Angeles is currently in conversations with the California Complete Count Office and the County of Los Angeles to ensure we can provide support to the state as they roll out their questionnaire assistance centers and questionnaire assistance kiosk guidance. On a parallel track, we are working with our city departments to conduct a readiness assessment in anticipation of these guidelines. Depending on the outcome of those guidelines, we may need additional funding to maintain the scope of our countywide program. 3, leveraging the city's infrastructure by disseminating information through city department programs and services and placing localized advertisements on city-owned assets such as street poles, buses, sanitation trucks, and outdoor digital billboards. A few of the departmental highlights include the Department of Water and Power is going to be printing Census 2020 messages on envelopes that will be sent to 1.6 million households, and they'll do this twice during the self-response period. Our Sanitation Department will place Census 2020 posters on their fleet of refuse collection trucks. Our Workforce Development Department is working with the Bureau to conduct recruitment events, and they've held 14 to date. Street lighting is going to be placing 575 signs and street poles that are going to be located in hard-to-count neighborhoods. Transportation Department is placing ads on their bus tails and videos, messages inside local buses. Our Information Technology Agency will be adding a recorded Census 2020 message from the mayor for all calls to the city instead of hold music, reaching approximately 750,000 people. And our 311 telephone operators will ask callers if they have completed the census during the response period, and if they need help, we'll direct them to additional information reaching approximately 125,000 people. Supporting and fostering on-the-ground outreach efforts by community organizations via the Los Angeles Census Fund, a grant-making program administered by the California Community Foundation designed to fund CBOs conducting on-the-ground outreach efforts in the city of Los Angeles. 5, promoting enumerator recruitment by amplifying and supplementing the federal government's efforts via targeted mayoral and departmental communications. 6, conducting direct outreach to historically undercounted populations and geographies by attending and hosting outreach events. A known gap area is engaging our residents experiencing homelessness. While we are working closely with the Los Angeles Services Homeless Authority and County of Los Angeles to reach this population, additional funds could make this effort much more effective. To support these program areas, we maintain a website, census.lacity.org, provide language access in 12 non-English languages, and support ADA accessibility. The infrastructure we've developed and the partnerships we've formed over the last 2.5 years has made it possible for us to create a multi-pronged, multifaceted outreach strategy, which I've shared with you today. I look forward to continuing to work with our partners and with the state to achieve a full count of our residents. This concludes my remarks. I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson, City of Long Beach.
Yes, good morning, Chairman UMBERG and Chairman Pan and Chairman Berman and members of the committee. It is my honor, distinct honor, to be able to present information about how we're working towards a successful census here in Long Beach, in the City of Long Beach. I want to begin my testimony by providing some background about how we're working as a city and as a community in a collaborative fashion to manage our way to a successful census. So in Long Beach, we have undergone an intensive collaborative planning process to develop an integrated strategic and implementation plans with members of our local Complete Count Committee, and making sure that our plans are in alignment with the goals and objectives of the federal, state, and county partners. The Long Beach Complete Count Committee is co-chaired by the city and the Long Beach Unified School District, and includes a diverse cross-section of local leaders representing educational institutions, all of them here in Long Beach, hospitals and clinics, community and faith-based organizations, businesses, and our local transit, health, and workforce development agencies. I'd like to point out that over the past 5 months, the goal of the committee has been to build effective partnership among all our member organizations, considering what each organization can do to build, can contribute individually while also capitalizing on the synergy of bringing caring leaders together in our community to understand the importance of a collaborative effort. So one of the first and I would think one of the most valuable accomplishments of our community as we have worked together collectively is to adopt a set of guiding principles to direct our planning and outreach efforts, including commitments to, 1, to count everyone, 2, focus, of course, on hard-to-count communities and nurture a local workforce, and finally, 4, to implement our plans strategically. Today, I'd like to just share some brief highlights about the city's plans and for census outreach using these 4 guiding principles. So to count everyone, I think our efforts began with a commitment to a holistic approach and investing the necessary resources to reach our entire community. To that end, in addition to being the primary committee, to being the primary convener of over 50 different organizations in a locally based complete count committee, we have committed $540,000 from our own general fund since 2018, and leveraging obviously the state funding in amount of $322,000 through a subcontract with our partners at LA County. One of our primary activities is to conduct outreach through a variety of communications media, including digital, print, radio, and television. As the main convener of the Complete Count Committee, we have become the center of the community's communication strategies. And and that is working very effectively for us, and we're happy about the progress that we're making on that to be able to support all of our partners. We're particularly proud of the outreach plans that have been submitted and are actively underway with 20 of our 23 city departments. They have stepped up to offer their visibility throughout the community and interacting with the public as a platform for communicating important messages about the census. Some key highlights include strong engagement with our city libraries, parks, facilities, and events, and working with our Public Works Department to brand physical infrastructure throughout the community, and engaging our utility departments to send messages through our utility bills. In addition, we're very fortunate to have the partnership with the Long Beach Unified School District, who you will hear from later on a different panel. It's providing us with a unique opportunity for broad-based outreach and engagement given its citywide footprint. So two, focusing on hard-to-count populations is the essential foundation of the city and the community strategy for having a successful census. And it's based on grassroots outreach via trusted messengers in hard-to-count areas as the primary building block of our approach. So we're working with community-based and faith-based organizations and providing support to them is part of our Complete Count Committee. And we're doing a number of other things, like we are in the process of developing protocols for recruiting and training at least 500 volunteer ambassadors and other active civic organizations who will be out in the community providing information about the census. We've identified 120 locations for census action kiosks and questionnaire assistance centers geographically concentrated in hard-to-count areas. We also are taking steps to engage our local ethnic media as a foundational element of our approach. I want to point out that we are in a unique position to have one of 3 cities in California to have its own health department. So we are leveraging the unique capacity of our health department through the community services in relationships with our hard-to-count communities, including but not limited to strategic deployment of our language access program, comprehensive engagement with our housing authority, tenant, and rental property owner communities, and engagement of our early childhood education partners, and the Long Beach Immigrant Rights Coalition. Additionally, we're utilizing we're going to be leveraging our homeless services infrastructure to partner with the Census Bureau to ensure an effective count of our sheltered and unsheltered homeless population. We are really, another key aspect of our strategy where we've identified activities is to have neighborhood-based community outreach. And so we have the fortunate opportunity to have an alumni network of 750 neighborhood leaders who went through our neighborhood leadership program, and we will be reaching out to them to use them as a foundation for building our neighborhood outreach strategies to hard-to-count communities and beyond. And I just want to quickly point out the third principle that's driving our efforts is to nurture a local census workforce. A couple things we're doing there. Our workforce development agency here with the city, Pacific Gateway Workforce Investment, the Workforce Investment Network, is they're actively conducting outreach to pools of potential census workers that possess the required skills to attain jobs with the census. In addition, they are collaborating with the Long Beach Complete Count Committee members, particularly community-based organizations, to develop shared messaging and outreach strategies. And we expect that they will be co-hosting recruitment events at different locations across the city. We're working with the Census Bureau to provide facility space for training and recruitment activities. And then finally, I'd like to just highlight a couple things to close about how we're working strategically. We fully expect that our committee will be using SOAR to identify populations and locations for rapid deployment of resources during the initial and non-response follow-up periods. And our collaborative model has been centered around building a foundation through the planning process, but as we get beyond halftime, if you will, and move into the implementation phase, that we will continue to build the capacities of all of our member organizations and add additional member organizations to assist with outreach as we move forward, and collecting data and analyzing that data through SWORD. We'll be able to be strategic and nimble to deploy resources where needed throughout the effort. And finally, we are proud of all the work.
Jackson, we can come back to you a little later during the period where we're asking questions. So, alrighty. If you want to just give us one quick paragraph, that'd be great.
I think that about sums it up for everything that's going on in Long Beach. I think if I could point out that if there are some strategic opportunities for some additional resources, we would look forward to having some additional support for technology, tablets and computers to support our census action kiosks and questionnaire assistance centers, in addition to potentially some additional resources to support CBO outreach with rapid response and micro-targeting. And finally, communications support with paid advertising at a hyperlocal level here in Long Beach.
Thank you, sir. Next, Ms. Molly Nichelson, Public Information Officer. the representative CEO of County of Orange. Thank you.
Thank you,
Ms.
Senator.
Nicholson.
Good afternoon, Senators and Assembly members. My name is Molly Nichelson. I'm the Public Information Manager with the County of Orange. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to address this committee and inform the public of the census outreach efforts in the County of Orange. The county released its request for proposals looking for trusted messengers to provide census outreach in the form of canvassing and other person-to-person strategies. The county, with the approval of our ad hoc Census Advisory Committee consisting of 2 members of the our Board of Supervisors, dedicated 50% of our budget to grassroots efforts, as has been identified as the most effective strategy to motivate hard-to-count residents by the California Complete Count Office and various stakeholders. The Board of Supervisors are expected to consider these contracts at our next Board of Supervisors meeting. Should the Board of Supervisors approve the contracts for our grassroots advocacy efforts, county staff will meet with each contractor to identify and schedule outreach activities. Our priority with our grassroots advocacy vendors is to ensure all resources are deployed in hard-to-count census tracts and block groups. Additionally, the county will be placing a strong emphasis on collaboration with other census partners across Orange County. As a part of the county's canvassing efforts, our contractors will be encouraging hard-to-count community members to participate in the census by explaining the benefits to their community with messages that are tailored and targeted to encourage participation. Contractors will be collecting pledges, raising awareness about the resources such as questionnaire assistance centers and phone assistance language lines. The county will be establishing question assistance centers in county facilities, which will include OC public libraries, County of Orange social service offices, and family resource centers, as well as creation of QACs in non-county owned sites. QACs will serve as an important purpose in creating greater accessibility. These centers will make the census accessible to all community members while reminding residents of the importance of competing in the 2027 census questionnaire. Using our contracted public relations firm, the county will be crafting regional messaging to complement the state's campaign. In addition to building unified messaging and branding that will be available to all partners, the county's public relations vendor, in conjunction with our county's CEO communications department, will help create earned media efforts while working with the outreach contractors to provide coordinated media support for the county's canvassing efforts. The county is also coordinating with Charitable Ventures of Orange County and the OC Department of Education to ensure broader collaboration for our census efforts. These efforts have been supported with the leadership and input by Congressman Luke Correa's office, as well as Senator Tom Umberg's office. We greatly appreciate all the assistance from our Orange County delegations in regard to our efforts. The County of Orange will be holding a coordination meeting scheduled for early next year with all contracted partners who will be working in Region 9. Additionally, this group identified the need to meet more regularly beginning in 2020 and found opportunities to share resources such as training capabilities. The County of Orange appreciates the funding from the state of California and the support of our congressional and state delegations in order to help achieve a complete count in Orange County. Using the funding provided by the state legislature in conjunction with the California Complete Count Office, the county will be coordinating a multi-pronged effort to engage residents through in-person contacts, digital and print media, and trusted messengers in a carefully coordinated multi-touch model that we believe will motivate all hard-to-count residents to complete the 2020 census. Again, thank you for the opportunity and look forward to working with our partners to ensure we have a successful census outreach and effort in Region 9.
Thank you, Ms. Nicholson. Next, Ms. Daisy Perez, City of Santa Ana.
Good afternoon, Senator Umberg and committee members. My name is Daisy Perez, and I am the lead for the census for the City of Santa Ana. The City of Santa Ana has the most hard-to-count census tracts of all of Orange County. As a result, the city has prioritized census outreach as one of our major initiatives for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. In early 2019, the city formed our own Complete Count Committee, which includes members of various stakeholders, including the Santa Ana Unified School District, Santa Ana College, and nonprofit organizations that have collaborated together on these efforts. Our Complete Count Committee members came together to create a partnership video with trusted voices from the city, as well as state and federal government leaders that highlight the importance of the 2020 census. We strategically played the video to a captive audience of over 10,000 residents before the headliner's performance at our largest community event of the year, Fiestas Patrias. At this same community event, members of the Santa Ana Complete Count Committee participated in a parade that had thousands of spectators. Members of all ages marched down the streets of Santa Ana in solidarity, displaying Santa Ana Counts and Make It Count t-shirts down the route. Since June, city staff and members of our Complete Count Committee have also conducted outreach at other countless community events of all levels, including small-scale neighborhood events to large-scale regional efforts. Since June 2019, we've already reached 60,000 members of our community. Through the leadership of the Santa Ana City Council, the city has stepped up and allocated our own resources to fund these efforts. To that end, our City Council has allocated $125,000 from our general fund towards this. With this funding, we have developed a robust digital marketing campaign, as well as funding for our census ambassadors and direct outreach. As a citywide priority, we have also activated resources from other departments to expand our reach. One of those internal partners is our library department. In partnership with the U.S. Census Bureau and library staff, we are conducting 12 informational workshops in English, Spanish, Vietnamese throughout the months of January and February of next year. In addition, we have prioritized our funding to help bridge the digital divide by purchasing additional Wi-Fi hotspots that are available to be checked out at our libraries. We hope that resources like this will help families complete the census from the comfort of their home if they so choose. Another key internal partner is our water division. We are working together in a joint campaign titled Make It Count to conduct additional outreach efforts. With their support, we are not just adding census messaging to our water bills, but we've also developed a calendar that will be mailed out to all households in the city. And this will have information on key dates from the census as well as other key information for our city. We're also working with our water department and our economic development division to conduct direct outreach to our restaurants and businesses. They've developed several materials for the children at those restaurants, as well as for the general patrons as well. Moving forward, we're going to continue to work with our stakeholders and trusted partners to promote the importance of the 2020 census to ensure that everyone in Santa Ana is counted. One of the city's biggest assets are 64 active neighborhood associations, and we will be working with our local neighborhood leaders to conduct local outreach throughout the next year. We are planning to conduct a series of community block parties and community walks in several of our hard-to-count communities in the city through funding that we are anticipating to receive from the County of Orange. However, we were recently notified that we will no longer be receiving this funding and will have to significantly reduce our outreach efforts unless additional dollars are received. Nonetheless, we will continue to prioritize the 2020 census moving forward. That concludes my presentation, and I am available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Before I turn it over to my colleagues for their questions, let me just point out 3 areas I'm going to ask about and give you an opportunity to think about while others are asking their questions. First, I'm going to ask each of you what additional resources you may have contributed to the effort. I note that Long Beach and Santa Ana has already identified some additional resources, but I'd like to ask each of you what additional resources are being contributed. What metrics or performance measures you're using. So, for example, I recall that Ms. De La Luz Garcia said they had a goal of 400 Goodwill ambassadors. You've exceeded it. I'm wondering what other metrics each of you are using, performance measures you're using, and then what challenges, what your greatest challenge may be, separate and apart from funding. We assume that everyone needs additional resources. And so let me turn it over to Assemblymember Berman. Since you're outnumbered 4-1 here, I thought maybe I'd give you the first opportunity to ask questions.
Thank you, Senator Unberg. It's considering there are twice as many assembly members and senators, I commend the Senate on your participation in today's hearing.
We're much more engaged than the Assembly.
I can't.
We care more.
I can't argue with the
obvious. So
can't argue with the data in front of us right now.
Right.
So, So a couple of you mentioned hiring or not hiring, but recruiting volunteer community ambassadors to participate, as Senator Umberg referenced a second ago. I guess the question is, are any of those ambassadors also applying to be enumerators or helping in enumerator recruitment? Because I know that's an area that we're falling short across the state. And then a lot of folks reference the questionnaire assistance centers and kiosks. And different plans that you have and identifying locations for those. How are those locations going to be advertised to your residents to make sure that they know where they can go, or is the hope that they're just so spread out everywhere that people will bump into them without even meaning to, which would be a good thing. And I should say I was really happy to hear a lot about some of the kind of PR efforts that folks are doing, whether it was garbage trucks or lampposts or other things, because my hope is that, I count signs are so ubiquitous across California that everyone just feels like it's something that everyone else is doing and that there's no risk to it. So it sounds like a lot of folks have creative ideas to make that happen.
I can answer the question for LA County in regards to the census action kiosk and kind of how we plan to advertise them. Early on in the process, LA County, with our colleagues, City of LA, we agreed that we would develop a CAC locator tool that would be able to push out so that people can find the closest QAC. We'll also make sure that we provide that information to our 211 line. We anticipate that people are going to have questions about the census and they're going to call 211, so we have to make sure that they're prepared. And also to make sure that that assistance is provided in language. And it'll also be something that'll be coordinated through our media campaign. But we did think about that. We did want to have one central place where people can find those locations.
Great.
And for the City of Los Angeles, in terms of the ambassadors and how are they learning about the enumerator jobs that are available with the U.S. Census Bureau, we have invited the U.S. Census Bureau to table at all of our census recruitment and training events, and they have gladly accepted each of those opportunities. We also provide them an opportunity to make a pitch before and after our trainings, so they are well integrated into our program. As far as promoting the census action kiosk located within the City of Los Angeles, we, in addition to working with the County of Los Angeles to create the locator tool, we're also going to be utilizing our Census Goodwill ambassadors during the non-response follow-up period and our canvassing, get out the count efforts to inform local residents about the census action kiosks around their neighborhood so that they know where to go when if they do not have access to a internet ready device, either computer, tablet, or phone, or just feel more comfortable going to a location where they might be able to obtain language assistance or digital literacy assistance. And then finally, we're going to be incorporated census kiosk messages into our advertising campaign so that there'll be messages where we are specifically promoting the census action kiosks and how to access the locator tool.
Great.
So in Long Beach, we are also going to be using the locator tool. We're going to, for marketing our kiosks, but in addition to that, incorporating information about our kiosks in all our multimedia outreach efforts, digital, print, and so forth. But I think what's going to be most effective for us in marketing our kiosk is all the direct outreach with our ambassadors being out in the community, and hopefully our neighborhood leaders dispersed throughout the city that have existing relationships with the communities that those kiosks will be in. I think the school district is going to provide us a really good opportunity too, because they're contributing several of the kiosks through their relationships to directly market those the kiosks. In terms of promoting the census jobs, we are certainly directing that messaging towards our ambassadors, and then also to we're actually also thinking about the idea of providing that information to our city employees who might be looking for other opportunities as well. So, yep.
Thanks.
So the County of Orange has actually been working in conjunction with the U.S. Census Bureau in relation to working to get enumerators. So we've been advertising in our county publications, through our HR avenues, on our LinkedIn pages, on all the social media outlets to ensure that there's a good deal of coverage in relation to that. Obviously, we've also made a pitch to our county employees through our internal publications to ensure there may be some part-time opportunities for them to come in as enumerators if they have any colleagues or friends or such that might be looking for positions. So we work very closely with our colleagues there. As far as the QACs and such, obviously we're gearing up in relation to that to actually launch that into our family resource centers, our libraries and such. But there will be a big coordinated effort once we do get off the ground and get approval for our grassroots efforts. We'll be working with our vendors to actually launch that to make sure we publicize it. And they'll be working very closely with the CEO Communications Office, my office in particular, to ensure we have a great deal of coverage as far as communication is concerned.
The bulk of the QACs in the city of Santa Ana will be placed at our community centers throughout the city, as well as additional government buildings. We will be placing this information in our community resource guides and recreation brochures that go out to all of our households. We will be also placing this information online. Regarding the census jobs and our ambassador program, so most of our census ambassadors are actually our neighborhood association leaders, and some of those already have full-time jobs, but we are inviting, and we have invited in the past, the U.S. Census Bureau to come and table with us at events, and those have been very successful thus far.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Berman. Senator Durazo?
Thank you very much. I just want to follow up on the issue of the hiring of enumerators. It seems to me there's some effort, but I'm not quite sure how formal and how big of an effort, how big of a push it is to use all of our resources to make sure we hire. That's what we're referring to, right? When we say the enumerators, they're the full-time. Ambassadors are more the volunteers, right? Just to be clear on the terms. So just in terms of the LA County, you mentioned a little bit about maybe using human resources, but is that possible to use it in a much more direct, full way, the way some of the other departments are being used? I know Department of Social Services, I think was mentioned that you're going to use the full scope of the agency. So can't human resources or maybe the registrar of voters be used in a much more forceful, complete way to find enumerator applicants? And overall, just can we use current resources right now to get the most number of enumerators?
So in my remarks, Senator, I mentioned that our county department, WEDAX, is currently coordinating 6 events. But what I didn't say is it didn't just start in December. It had actually previous events through existing kind of events. We've been including census jobs messaging. That's part of it. The other part is kind of making connections with those applicants that come through our county, either contractors or through our departments, to make that connection with jobs and making sure that we push those messages out. Another component of that is also our media strategy, including it on all our websites, as well as pushing it out through social media. That's just a piece or a component of it. And the other part that we're asking our departments to do is to come up with kind of unique areas that we can push it out, whether it's through partnerships with our cities, but also with our county departments. So it's not just, I know I mentioned the 6 events happening, but this, I want to kind of make it clear that it has been happening over the past kind of like 6 months.
And do you have any way of gauging, do we have sufficient, are we meeting some, are there some goal as far as the number to be hired? I know you don't do the hiring, but do you have any way of gauging, are we where we need to be in order to reach so many hard-to-count populations.
I think that's kind of the difficulty for LA County. And so one of the things that we're doing, we have a meeting scheduled with the U.S. Census Bureau to kind of see how we can be more helpful to kind of hit those targets. We know what their goal is. We know that they're 38% of their hiring goal. But I think that's kind of where the partnership with the U.S. Census Bureau would come in so that we can kind of develop some metrics to meet that.
Yes, and
I
I just
can-
have one more question after you. Thank you.
Okay, no, I can offer some comments about that, the enumerated recruitment. We are specifically have engaged our workforce development agency, Pacific Gateway, to develop and execute strategies in partnership with the Census Bureau to help out with enumerated recruitment. We are actively working with the Census Bureau to identify training and recruitment space in our city facilities to host events in partnership with the Bureau. Our workforce development agency is actively analyzing pools of existing job seekers within their current network for potential potential employees for the census that they can actually train and refer to the Bureau for jobs. So that is sort of the primary way that we're doing our recruitment for enumerators in the city of Long Beach.
Just one more question is, we all know that this environment, that our immigrant communities, whether citizens or legal residents or undocumented, doesn't really matter, are in a very mixed emotions about how much to trust government. We had an issue with our DMV and the sharing of information. So can you just tell me, I know that's not your sole responsibility. We have a media and communications part of the strategy. But how do you, especially Los Angeles County and Orange County, how do you sort of see our response or our communications out there to the issue of immigration status for our communities to feel secure and confident to participate?
I can address this, at least in terms of addressing, when I addressed our county departments, what I had to express to our county departments is the state of California and LA County specifically has shown to our undocumented and immigrant populations that we're there to support them. We've created the LA Justice Fund in partnership with the city of LA. Additionally, the Board of Supervisors created the Office of Immigrant Affairs. So I feel, even though when we talk about trusted messengers, often we're talking about CBOs, I would argue that in the county, it's also our county departments. It's where they go, whether it's through the library, they take their children there, or it's our health department. So I think we're incorporating a lot of that messaging and our touches. And that is going to be tied into our countywide campaign. The other component for us, we also have our Office of Immigrant Affairs who's kind of messaging these to the various CBOs that we work with. And also that's where we're going to hear from anyone. If we start to kind of hear misinformation, they're going to come through our Office of Immigrant Affairs, and hopefully we can take that message and work with our partners, whether it's with the city or with CCF, to kind of develop that. And I think that's where the collaboration is going to be, especially once we get to the non-response follow-up. We'll be hearing some of those things and partner from the community as well as with the state. I think that's where, for us, it's going to be key, is coordinating our messaging, not only with our cities, with CCF, as well as the state, so that we're all coordinated in that regard.
And I'll just add that in the city of Los Angeles, and just reiterate as well, that we recently held a briefing for the Consular Corps in Los Angeles to brief them on the countywide efforts happening here in Los Angeles and get their enlistment to help with outreach, especially with nationals that go and seek services to their consulates directly. We're also working with our Census Goodwill ambassadors, and a great many deal of them don't have citizenship status, and that's because we've made the requirements to be a CGA very flexible. The only requirement is to be Los Angeles, to have the event in the city of Los Angeles, and to be 18 years and older. So again, citizenship status or status in the U.S. is not a requirement to be a Census Goodwill ambassador, and we have been able to do that through the private funds that we've received through the foundation. And also to piggyback on the point Avianna was making, is that utilizing our infrastructure both in the County of Los Angeles and in the city, where we have the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs that works directly with community-based organizations that service immigrant populations. And we've worked very closely with some of the state's statewide contracted partners like Chirla and Aleo to hold outreach events to immigrant communities to begin putting out messaging around the importance of participating and being counted in the 2020 census.
Yes, I'll address that too. Through our Department of Health Office of Equity, we do have strong relationships with the immigrant and undocumented community, and particularly with the Long Beach Immigrant Rights Coalition. We, over the last couple of years, we've been actively working with those organizations with a couple of outcomes. We established the Long Beach Justice Fund, the Long Beach Values Act. So the strength of our relationships with the immigrant community are very, very good. Another key indicator of how we're working with our immigrant community, they are actually a part of our Complete Count Committee, and they are actively working with us and proposing activities to help us get the trusted messages out into the community. So we have a really good opportunity through our Office of Equity and the work we're doing with immigrant relations in that office.
I mean, working for the government, we obviously know that sometimes people are a little hesitant to talk to county governments or city governments, especially, you know, with county governments, you deal with us sometimes on your worst days. But there's also, you're dealing with us making great relationships, particularly with our family resource centers, our social workers, and such along those lines that are more of our trusted messengers. So we are looking to leverage those relationships that some of our constituents have with some of our folks that are actually in the community helping provide services and such. But the trusted messenger component is very important as well, and we understand that that's going to be the way in. They have those relationships. They've fomented them over the years. There's now a trusted component there. So we're very cognizant of where our weaknesses are as far as doing the outreach and the communication with different constituencies. So the county is working to leverage all of our grassroots advocacy components that are actually in the community, that are seen as trusted messengers to help advocate and make sure that folks that are in those hard-to-count areas fill out their census forms.
The city of Santa Ana has identified this as a tremendous challenge since the beginning of our efforts. As a sanctuary city, we have a sanctuary advisory roundtable that has come together, and we are taking advantage of these community partners, and then we're working with them and with our Mexican consulate's office to come up with additional messaging that is specifically targeting the myths regarding the citizenship question that was up there, because some folks still think it's going to be on there, and also just reiterating that their data is safe. As you mentioned, the incident that happened with the DMV didn't help our case, so we're going to just continue to move that message forward. We've been working with staff from the County of Orange to come up with a joint infographic that we can display throughout the entire county, just indicating what happens to your data once you respond to the census, and that they can see that this will not be able to come back and be tracked to them. We're hoping that that will be helpful, and we'll have that in a series of languages as well.
Thank you, Senator Durazo. Senator Pan.
Thank you so very much, Senator Umberg. And I want to thank all the presenters. I know that the amount of time we gave you was not necessarily enough to cover everything you're doing, and I think the idea was to get the highlights, and certainly any material you can send us about some other activities is always welcome. First, a couple comments, and then a couple questions. So first of all, children are one of the groups that's hard to count. So I'm hoping that in the messaging that's going out to everyone, I know people are working with, we're hearing from schools, First Five and so forth, but also just kind of reminding people that if there's children in the household, they need to count them, right? That they need, so hopefully that's part of the regular messaging, and also giving some people some guidance as to, basically just remember, you're counting yourself, but you also need to, there's kids in the household, be sure you put them in there, all the kids, right? The other thing is I know that many of you mentioned, you're setting up your QACs and so forth. I'm hoping that the state folks that we can actually, and you'd mentioned you have a locator app. I'm hoping that everyone's not trying to develop their own, maybe the state should do that, and we have a statewide database of all the QACs and so forth, so anyone who's wherever they are could actually potentially pull up an app and find it. I know many people use mobile. People who do have access often particularly lower income, may just have mobile. They don't necessarily have desktop or something. So again, trying to be sure that that information is easily obtained and disseminable. A couple questions. First is about language access. For the API community in particular, but also for many other communities, language is an issue. We know there are several languages that are, in part of the census program and the census. I guess what I'm going to ask about is the ones that aren't, right? The ones that aren't the top 5 or even the top 10. Okay, and we're talking about the hard to count. So, so what is being done to reach out to communities who are speaking, I would say fairly rare languages, okay, and trying to figure out how do we get to those communities. Some of them, their languages may not necessarily really have a written form. It's mainly oral, other types of things. So you're not going to hit them in mass media. They may or may not be on social media. They're not going to be hit, but they're not one of the qualified census languages. What are you doing to try to help? And they may not necessarily cluster all in one geographic area either. They may be scattered in, and obviously, LA is certainly a melting, the salad, whatever. Some people don't like melting pot garden salad of, a variety of different cultures. So can you maybe speak to particularly languages that are fairly infrequent, that are not the main languages or the top 5 that what are you doing to reach out to those communities and provide in-language support?
So for the LA County, most of what we're contracting 2/3 of that, so we're working with the cities to meet that. But what we looked at internally, one of the reasons we have so many QACs and QAKs is we don't know if people are going to be driven there, so we're trying to cover all the places that they potentially will be. And to cover all those languages, we're trying to look where we have county staff who speak that language, for example, our Department of Public Social Service, but there's a big gap. So one of the things that we looked at is contracting with the language line. This is a service that is used in our health centers and our public health centers to offer that translation service, which would go beyond the threshold languages. So that is kind of a resource, because for us, I think it's, in terms of value and kind of the dollars that we have limited, it is what we're looking for. That's kind of how LA County is going to be addressing it at some of our county locations. The other thing I just wanted to mention, because we talked about the CAC locator tool, I did want to say, obviously, all our locations are going to be uploaded into SWORD, so that would be where the information, we're not going to just do our own thing and then not have that information available statewide, so I just wanted to clarify that. The other thing in understanding that it is really important for us to go where people are. Here at the county, what we're looking at is also developing mobile kiosk where we would actually go to events. So what we're doing between January through the end of the response period, we're working with all our county departments, our board offices, to identify kind of where the locations where are hard to count are. Where do we already have a presence, and where can we go to them? Because I think that is going to be key, is reaching out to them where they're at, not necessarily hoping that we drive them to our libraries or drive them to our health clinics. The idea is when they're there, we can make a contact and engage them, encourage them to fill out the census. That is one way. But really, we realize that we have to also complement that with going out to where they're at.
And for the City of Los Angeles, I think we're really taking this as part of a 3-pronged strategy. One is this is where our partnership with the Los Angeles Regional Census Table is really going to be critical, because we'll be promoting all of the partner hotlines that have them in operation during the activation period, and making sure that if somebody needs to be directed to a particular language line where they do have that language expertise, that we're promoting that hotline. We're also going to be including the language guides that have been developed by the U.S. Census Bureau in 59 different languages in our questionnaire, in our census action kiosks locations, and providing them at outreach events that we attend.
There's more than 59 languages in LA, right?
Yes, that's right. And then we are also, through our Census Goodwill Ambassadors programs, those Census Goodwill Ambassadors that speak unique languages, we're going to be tapping them to have them lead events where they are the trusted messenger and ambassador to their community to inform people of the 2020 census in their language.
So we currently have a language access program that provides interpretation and translation services for any language, if you will, with the core languages being Khmer, Tagalog, and Spanish are the principal languages that are of concern to our community. The Khmer is of particular concern to us because it's not one of the primary priority languages, and Long Beach has a significant Cambodian population. So, so we are prioritizing resources to make sure that we do, direct outreach to that segment of our community through ethnic media outlets. We have one here, and working with our Cambodian community to assist with connecting people.
Just as a brief follow-up, so because you have a large Cambodian population in Long Beach, there's obviously, there's other Cambodian populations across the state. Is there any conversation, and again, the state people haven't had a chance to talk yet, but to take, okay, well, since Long Beach has a large Cambodian population, develop materials, whatever outreach that's then available to other places that may not have larger, may have small Cambodian populations, but may not, because they're smaller, don't have as many resources to, so like, are we exchanging or trading information with other places? So I would imagine Long Beach would probably take the lead on the Cambodian population.
Yeah, absolutely. We are certainly willing to do that. I'm not aware of any contact that we've had with any other communities in that regard. But, however, it's a very good point. We are very well resourced in that area, and so we would be willing to offer our support.
Okay, well, so I think that would be, hopefully there would be a conversation about that, because, I mean, for example, I know that some of the Pacific Islander population, I guess it represents, 0.4% I saw in the thing, like Samoan, Fiji, and so forth. So who's going to develop the materials for that? And do we need does every single county need to develop their own, or can we find a way to where there's local areas that may have a larger community where they may be able to, because they have those relationships, then help use those materials that can help other places then say, well, we don't have as much of a relationship, or the community is much smaller in our area, but then we have materials we can use, our advice they can give to do that. So hopefully we're creating some sort of learning collaborative or something about that in the state.
I believe, and maybe the state can correct me later, that I think part of that is they've created this partner portal, would be able to share some of those materials. So that probably would be a good resources for us to collectively kind of share those materials. The state's saying yes, so I think that was the intention of that, I think.
Okay, thank you, and I don't want to neglect our Orange County colleagues as well.
Thank you, Senator Pan. Obviously, working as a communicator in the County of Orange, the need to have things translated in multiple languages is incredibly important. Within the county itself, we obviously people speak Farsi, we speak different types of Chinese, Khmer is the other one. We do have a Cambodian population as well. So we would love to have that support. We do have interpreters that are on staff, whether they work for the Social Services Agency and have translation components. We have an outside translating service that we actually have at the county. The most important thing for me is obviously I'm getting it right in writing, but for our people that are on the ground, that they have those cultural norms and cultural sensitivities to actually communicate effectively is going to be the most important thing. So as you can imagine, I'm not going to be an expert on understanding all the cultural norms and sensitivities, ages, whatever it needs to occur, but I want to ensure as whatever documents we get are done correctly and are looked over and message tested and such along those lines. So any resources that we have, the hive mind, the other communities and such would be great. But as you can imagine, even the different constituencies across may vary from Los Angeles County to Orange County, depending on what part of the country, their countries they come from, so as well. So we'd love to have that support, and we look to see what we can do to ensure that the messaging is done effectively.
The City of Santa Ana has access to translation services in Spanish and Vietnamese. When we need access to census material in other languages, we have reached out to our partners at the County of Orange, but that is for some of those common languages, like Chinese has been really helpful to the materials that we've received from them in that language. But to echo Molly's comments, it would be great if the state prioritized, putting out information that any city or county could use in multiple language, and that way we can ensure that statewide we have a clear and consistent message.
Now, I did have a second question, but I'm going to turn to a comment instead of a question because I know we need to move on. The other, question or comment I was going to say is that as we're moving along, I just know how organizations work, and this is probably also a question I'm going to bring up or a comment I'm going to give to our nonprofits who are presenting next. Oftentimes, especially with a deadline, we're barreling along, we need to get this done. We tend to go to our usual partners, right? They're the people we're used to working with, the people we already have a relationship with, and that's great, and we need to work with them. But I also ask that we also, especially since we still have a few months, we still have 100 days, to think about the people we don't normally partner with, or the people who we've had, and there might be different reasons that might have happened over time or something, but they're also representing groups of people who then what happens may not be as touched, right? Because so I just ask that we reflect on if we just wait for the people who we're used to coming and they come to the table, but we're not looking like where the empty seats are, the people who haven't come to the table. So I think this is a good time now to sort of reflect on who is it that's out there that's not here. We might have had even a bad experience with them before. And say, well, do we need to rethink that, especially for the census? So I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm sure you're doing all the outreach you can, but I just want people to think about that because those would be the places where gaps could occur as well. And it's harder. It takes more work because these are people who you don't necessarily have an existing relationship with. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pan. And we ought to put a pin in it, so to speak, and when Ms. Katagi testifies a little later on, that's a great question about coordination of resources. Using the Khmer language as an example, there are other places in the state, Santa Ana, for example, that has a large number of Khmer speakers, and so we should be making sure that we have some economies of scale here. All right. Before we turn to Senator Gonzalez, and I know that every question that was asked, every member of the panel feels an obligation to respond. I promise not to hold it against you if you don't need to respond to every question. If you want to contribute, that's wonderful, but you should not feel compelled to contribute on each question, and that will apply to later panels as well. All righty, Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you. This has been a great discussion so far, so thank you all again. So again, I think I reiterate a lot of what my colleagues talk about in terms of the 0 to 3 population. And I didn't see, and maybe I just skipped over this in my head, but early education sites, are we thinking about a strategy to tackle, the preschoolers? And also even, I was just at St. Mary's and looking at their maternal sites and, Lamaze classes. Is there a strategy for that? Because I think that's where, even if you're pregnant, there's still someone that's coming along that sometimes often is not counted, or mothers are not thinking about counting them.
I can speak to that. So I believe it was maybe 2 weeks ago, in coordination with the LA County Office of Education and First Five, we held our kind of first convening of all the various partners, and I think those are some of the strategies that were kind of included, but we're supposed to have a follow-up meeting in January, so I can take some of those comments and feedback to make sure that we include those populations. But what we did for this initial meeting was for all these groups to kind of get in a room and share what they're doing, whether it's in the preschools, whether it's in schools or LACO, so that we have that one conversation. So I can take that back to our next meeting, which is scheduled for January. I know that our colleagues from LA County Office of Education may touch on that too, but we will take that back to make sure.
Great, thank you. And then the other question is similar to what Dr. Pan mentioned about people we don't often think about collaborating with, but I would even look at how we can leverage private support, some of our larger corporations, both on the funding side, because they often have social responsibility opportunities where they can give to the census initiatives, and B, for their employees that could potentially volunteer and become ambassadors. So I think just things to think about, unless there's something you want to highlight. If we're already working with some private industry, I think that could be another opportunity.
I'll just highlight something that we did in partnership with Wells Fargo. We trained their employees to be Census Goodwill Ambassadors, and so that's just one example of how we are leveraging our partnerships with private business.
Yes. The local business is a sector in our Complete Count Committee, and we've engaged the Chamber, we've engaged our business improvement districts, but also some local businesses as well. We have one example I'd like to just share is Frontier Communications is sitting in our Complete Count Committee, and they have offered up an opportunity to partner on trying to access some equipment, technology equipment. You know, so it may not meet all of our needs, but we feel that that is very substantial, and a substantial contribution that they're planning to make, and so I felt it was important to highlight that one in particular. And that's kind of part of our model and how we're working, and it's why we've engaged the businesses to have direct outreach with the businesses, but also to cultivate opportunities for sharing resources. And so I wanted to lift up that one example with Frontier Communications.
Thank you, Senator Gonzalez. All right, let's just do a quick lightning round here. The questions I asked earlier, we'll just start with Ms. Uribe. What has Los Angeles County, if anything, contributed beyond what state resources provided?
So in terms of resources, I think when I started, we had maybe 3 or 4 staff just fully assigned to census, meaning they were not given any other responsibility. I think since then we're up to about maybe 7 staff, including our GIS staff. So at this point, it's been staff resources. I do think as we start to conduct some of this gap analysis through the end of this month and we bring our cities online, that we may be looking at potentially non-response follow-up as kind of an issue that we may have to kind of devote resources, but I don't want to, it's not up to me, but I think just in terms of kind of what LA County has dedicated in terms of resources.
So is there a specific, I'm actually looking for a specific dollar amount. Is there a specific dollar amount that the County of Los Angeles has designated?
Potentially, yes.
Potentially,
yes.
Any sense of when that might happen? Before April, I hope.
Yes, before
Okay,
April.
good.
So I think I would like to come back and provide that, but I think that the answer is yes. I just don't have that dollar figure.
All right. City of Los Angeles?
The City of Los Angeles has contributed $2.1 million since 2017.
Thank you. Long Beach? I know, Mr. Jackson, you already testified. I think it was $540,000. Is that right? All right. County of Orange?
I don't have that figure, but obviously I can get that to you, but we do have staff that are obviously working on it currently, and also we'll be engaging our staff from various departments, or 23 departments across the county.
Okay. Santa Ana, I think you've testified, but go ahead.
Yes, so this city has allocated $125,000 from our general fund. In addition, our other departments have put together about $50,000 towards this effort, and then we've allocated about $75,000 so far in staff time. So far the city has put about $250,000 towards this effort.
All righty. Thank you. Next question for the group, lightning round. Metrics. If you can give me just one example of a metric that you're using pre-April, that would be helpful. And then to the extent that you actually have metrics and where you are on those metrics, if you could submit them to us, I would be interested in that. So starting with county, Los Angeles.
So one example, because it's fresh in my mind, is through our media contractor, we actually do have kind of metrics for kind of how we're spending those dollars, whether it's like click-through rates, social media, kind of Facebook. I think those are things that we built in because we know that we're going to have to kind of demonstrate our dollars and how they're effective. So that's probably one example, but I can also share other metrics that we're incorporating within our city contracts, including here with City of LA did a really great job of kind of outlining what their metrics, as well as Long Beach.
City of Los Angeles.
Yeah, through our direct outreach efforts, we're actually already uploading information onto the SWORD system that documents the number of impressions that we are having at all of our outreach events. And I already mentioned the goal of recruiting Census Goodwill ambassadors. We've exceeded that. And we will also be collecting metrics from the CGAs. Each one of them that we train will be expected to collect 25 pledge to be counted sheets from the people that they engage. And for the mini grants that we give out to organizations, their goal is to obtain 50. So just 2 examples.
Okay. So what I may have been inarticulate, when I say metrics, I actually mean performance measures. So where you set, for example, a goal of 400 and we have achieved X amount toward that. So Long Beach?
So we work with our member Complete Count organizations to identify activities to contribute towards the outreach effort, and they've set goals. And so we're going to be tracking those activities in SWORD. to determine, to
Do you
what
have an example of any of those goals and where you might be in relation to those goals?
We've just completed the identification through our implementation plan of those activities, and so and we created the tracking mechanism now for SWORD, and so we haven't begun putting that information into SWORD. We do have a goal. A couple things I can highlight. We have a goal to recruit 500 census ambassadors. We know we're starting with, as a starting point, we're going to be working with our 750 neighborhood leadership alumni. We think we will make significant headway there, so we've already begun working on that. We're going to be reaching out to our boards and commissions and so forth.
That's perfect. That's what I'm looking for is we have a goal of X, and we are keeping track to see how close we're coming to that goal and how we're progressing.
Yeah,
So, all
if
right.
I could point out one other thing, we know that we have, the Bureau has a goal of hiring 4,000 enumerators here in Long Beach. And currently, as we understand it, we're at about 2,000. And so we have a delta there, and so we are using our workforce development agency and the
All
partnership.
right. Thank you. Perfect.
That.
Okay. County of Orange?
We are currently working on establishing these goals and these metrics in relation to it, because obviously the state would like ROI and knowing where we need to put resources. And as you can imagine, the communications component, that'll be more easily trackable as far as impressions are concerned.
So there's no performance measures at this
Not the
time.
present time. We're actually
All right.
working.
And
on
then
those
you're gonna help us out and provide those.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. City of Santa Ana?
So one of our goals is to interact with approximately 300,000 residents over the period of time. So far, we've counted about 60,000 direct impressions. And then we're also counting how many signups we receive from residents to actually receive ongoing updates on the census. So far, we have over 1,000 emails and phone numbers.
What's the goal?
We don't have a number set for that one. We just are trying to get as many as we possibly can.
Okay. Last lightning round question. I'm sure you all need more resources. We'll assume that. But separate and apart from money, what's your biggest challenge?
Besides time, because we don't get an extension for the census, right? So we'll accept that. For LA County at least, now that we have the guidelines for our QACs and CAQ, our census action kiosks and our question action centers, it'll be kind of rolling that out to make sure that the locations we identified meet those requirements. So that is going to be a significant challenge. So in light with the City of LA, we're going to be doing a readiness assessment of our county locations. But for us, that will be our Christmas and New Year project to make sure that our locations kind of meet the requirements.
All right. Thank you. City of Los Angeles?
Direct outreach to residents experiencing homelessness given the size and complexity of our population.
Long Beach?
Outside of resources, I would say additional support, similar to LA, reaching out to our homeless population.
Orange County?
The challenge is obviously just the volume of folks that we actually have to touch within a relatively short time period. So that would probably be the
Any
big thing.
specific Orange County challenge?
None that I can think of right at the
All right.
present moment.
Santa Ana?
One of our challenges is to ensure that all of our households within one address are counted. We have a lot of either folks living in ADUs or additional units within that property, and just combating that. Just because one of the households for that address was counted does not mean that everyone in the household was counted.
All right. Thank
So
you.
folks that don't necessarily feel that they're part of this household, we just need to remind them that they should be counted
Should
as well.
tell some of our colleagues are trying to create more ADUs, as a matter of fact. So a couple questions in the County of Orange. The City of Santa Ana said that they're the hardest to count city. Is that right? Is that your estimation as well?
Yes, the cities of Santa Ana as well as Anaheim would be the two hardest count cities in the County of Orange.
All right. And in terms of coordination with the Orange County Department of Education, are you coordinating with the Orange County Department of Education?
Yes, we are at this time.
Okay. And maybe offline, we'll ask some more questions about how that coordination's going and what their plans are as well. So, all right. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time, panel. We'll excuse you, and we'll call up the next panel. Next panel is We Count LA Community, Our Census, and that will consist of the California Community Foundation, Efrain Escobedo, Vice President, Long Beach Forward, James Suarzo, Associate Director, and Southeast LA Collaborative, Cynthia Cortez, Associate Director. So if you'd all come forward, and before you testify, that we appreciate that you probably have much more to say than the time that has been allocated. Contrary to popular perception, all of us up here can read. So if there's something that you'd like us to consider, please feel free. And I know I've asked some questions, asked for some follow-up information. Please consider giving us additional information in writing. And I'm also informed our staffs can read as well. So, all right. So let's start with Efron Escobedo from the California Community Foundation. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Thank you, Senator Unberg and members of the committee. Assemblymember Berman, thank you for representing the Assembly in the House. Appreciate that. This morning, I'd like to make some brief remarks, and I appreciate Senator Durazo's point about we all know the census is important, so we've been at it for 2 years, but where are we today so that we could understand what shape we're in going into 2020. And I'm privileged and excited to share the stage with two very important partners of ours in this effort, which is Long Beach Forward and our Sella Collaborative, folks who really exemplify the answer to that question. So I'll be sure to leave the time for them. In terms of Los Angeles County, I do have to say that where we're at right now is, in our sense, a great spot, and a lot of it is because of what you heard from our leaders both at the county and our various key cities. It's because of the trust and early coordination that we've built with the county, City of LA, City of Long Beach, and other cities that we've really, as administrative CBO, California Community Foundation, and our partners have had an opportunity to really freely and deeply focus on what does our community need, to be sure we have folks who can reach folks out the door, to make sure that we've identified brick and mortars where the county can partner with folks to be questionnaire assistance center, and all of that knowing that simultaneously the county was working on mobilizing every resource it had, as well as the city. The city's contribution into the pooled fund for Los Angeles was a tremendous catalyst, in addition to the state's funding to also bring philanthropy to the table. So what I will share with you today is that, one, the early investment from your legislative body, the support of the governor's office, and the everyday support of the Complete Count office brought significant resources to LA, $8.4 million. But what really has happened since then is, with our public sector partners and community partners, really working with philanthropy to have them step up. And I'm happy to report that in addition to the $8.4 million investment from the state, we've actually augmented that to upwards of over $17 million that all have been concentrated on get out the count efforts in various communities and hard to count tracts in LA County. The way that we've worked early in planning has been in collaboration with key organizations that have been transformative to LA on any issue, from healthcare to education to civic participation. And what you see up on the slides is what we call the core of the steering committee. So everything that you hear about today has been built in collaboration and partnership with these organizations. And as with these organizations have been able to then work and interact with the county as they've developed, and the city as they've developed the complete count committees. All these organizations play lead roles in their regions in helping to support other local complete count committees. Pacoima Beautiful out in the valley has helped San Fernando build a complete count committee. And so these are really the organizations that have built it. The question of metrics has been brought up. You see USC, Dorncef, and Engage R&D have been working collaboratively with organizations across the county to understand how are you measuring success. We need to make sure that success is a person educated, a person counted. And so they're working collaboratively with us, with the SWORD team in the state, to make sure that we have metrics as we start moving forward, but metrics that are real. And so we're excited to have those partnerships as well. A lot of the work that we've been doing early on as we received resources from the state, and here I will underscore that having had resources early has made a big difference and you'll see this in the next couple of slides. The first is we work collaboratively with our community partners and steering committee to identify what are the capacities that organizations say they need to build in order to be effective messengers on the census. So we identified messaging, media training, digital training as key things organizations needed beyond just bodies. And to date, we launched with our partners at Fenton a toolkit, online toolkit that where organizations can access these resources, get access to trainings. We've had over 1,000 folks access these toolkits so far, 833 different users, and just even more downloads than that. And you'll see some of that as our partners have deployed those different assets. Communications training was something critical. We're going to need a lot of different trusted messengers, and they're trusted, but in order for them to have an impact, they need to be effective as well. And so to date, we've collaborated to put together 4 different communications trainings across the county, where we've had 132 different organizations participate. Again, this is done in coordination with our partners at the state, the county, and the city as well. It is just an image of different community partners building their capacity, talking about, there was a lot of conversation early on about message testing and what are we learning from focus groups. This is an image of all of that testing being put to use in our trusted messengers and working and preparing for how to not just talk to the community, but to media, to make sure every opportunity we get, we give the right message. We shared with the committee a quick snapshot and report of the scale of resources that have been deployed. So here in LA County, as of last week, we've been able to provide grant funding for Get Out the Count activities to 100 organizations across the county, totaling $12.7 million in investments with a mix of both public dollars and private dollars. This covers a range of tactics, everything from door-to-door to train the trainer to implementing more effective digital media outreach, and obviously as well preparing for becoming a questionnaire assistance center and other ways to help and be part of the effort. I won't go into these pieces, but in the materials we provided, and happy to answer questions, what communities have been covered, what populations have been covered. We've been able to document and share that. And Senator Pan, to your earlier question about our reach and language, there's what we'll be able to print, and we're working all across the different partners to do as much as we can. But as far as organizations on the ground, we've recorded about 37 different languages covered through the various partners so far in the grant making. And so that gives us extensively more reach to what we're doing. And we've provided, for transparency purposes, who are all the organizations so far that have been funded. So once again, want to thank you all at the state for your leadership, the partnership with the state census office, but more importantly, our local leadership at the county and the cities that have allowed us to really build this in partnership.
Thank you, Mr. Escobedo. Now, the Long Beach Forward, Mr. Suazo.
I'm just going to take a moment to click through. There we go. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is. Legislatures, census time. There's never enough time in the census. My name is James Suazo. I'm the associate director at Long Beach Forward. But first off, I have to say hi, Mom, because she's watching the live stream right now. So I am excited to share a little bit about what Long Beach Forward is working on as one of the regional co-conveners with the LA Regional Census Table and the We Count Los Angeles campaign. So a little bit about going off of what Efrain talked about in terms of the way we're organizing and thinking about scale, because when we think about the census and what it takes to get a complete count, it's a question of scale, right? So for us in our approach with LA County being the largest and hardest to count in the country, we know we had a large task ahead of us, and our approach to that in the first actually throughout all of 2019 was the LA Regional Census Table, which was restructured at the beginning of the year to bring in regional co-conveners, including Long Beach Forward in Long Beach, the Advancement Project California, LA Voice, Pacoima Beautiful, the Cela Collaborative. Cynthia will talk a little bit about their work. Antelope Valley Partners for Health, to really organize and bring together community-based organizations to learn about the census, help get prepared, and really that's a recognition that CBOs are trusted messengers within the community and to focus and prioritize our efforts on hard-to-count communities. Our role is not only just to reach out to hard-to-count communities, but more importantly, what often doesn't get lifted up is to validate all of the messages that are already being put out there by different levels of government, by our local municipalities, and to ensure that the people understand about the safety and security of the census. So one of the efforts that has come out of that collaboration and resource sharing has been the We Count campaign, which you've seen the Los Angeles logo. I introduce you now to the, I think, cooler Long Beach version of the logo. I'm a little biased. But just to give you an idea of what this scale looks like, right, when we're talking about a regional approach, we're also, oh my gosh, 1 minute. Okay, we're also talking about a regional approach in these subregions, right, where we have organizations within Long Beach coming together and all of these different organizations that you can see listed on, working on various levels of census education and outreach to hard-to-count communities. And what that actually has looked like has been different as we've been rolling out over these coming months. And I will say, for us and our team, back in our office and in our community, the census is already here, right? There's no it's coming, it's already here for us. So what that's looked like has been connection, and bringing organizations together has allowed us to do more relationship building, not just within organizations and within our ecosystem, but also across sectors. So we've been able to leverage relationships with anchor institutions such as Cal State Long Beach, even working with the city as well, but also really to look at asset building and how we can bring in community to reach hard-to-count communities that actually are from that community. That's something that we did in a lot of our early meetings, where we had organizations come in, whether they were large nonprofits or small grassroots neighborhood groups, saying, if we're going to reach out to the senior population, if we're going to reach out to the Black population, we need people from those communities to do that. And as you all probably know, that requires a hefty amount of resources to really support and do that properly. And for us, it's really about hitting the ground running with direct outreach. So whether that's door knocking, phone banking, and actually doing that to scale, where we can prioritize areas such in Long Beach, like Central, West, and North Long Beach, where you have these concentrations of hard-to-count communities. And just to lastly underscore what Efrain mentioned, all of these efforts and everything that you see in these photos of folks coming together and doing this work is long-term capacity building. And I want to emphasize that this investment in community-based organizations to do this work is a long-term investment in the health of the communities, where so many other social programs and economic strategies that you all are looking at is directly impacted by this. So we're building a long-term strategy to really engage people directly from the community, and at the same time engage people in the importance of the census. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suazo. Thank you also for making sure that this streaming is most valuable, so we know we have at least one viewer. We appreciate that, Mom, for tuning in. That'll help our metrics. So, all right. Thank you. Ms. Cortez.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Cynthia, and I'm very happy to be here to talk a little bit about the work the Cella Collaborative is doing in the Southeast LA. To share a little bit about the collaborative, we are a network of nonprofit organizations gathered to lead Southeast Los Angeles County into an era of vitality by strengthening the Cella communities, building collective power, and encouraging regional systemic change. Now, one of the first things I want to talk about is, what did our 2010 census response rate profile look like? And this map really highlights the fact that our region is considered very high, or has a very high or high-low response score. And we also know that this indicator is derived by the 12 variables that inform the hard-to-count index. So when we start talking about what is it going to take to actively reach the nooks and crannies of not only the different cities, but unincorporated areas or different spaces that are not necessarily easy to reach by virtue of our maybe street infrastructure system, we have learned that by being able to start these conversations early on, our region has a lot of unique stakeholders that are all committed for census engagement and outreach, but at various degrees. So looking at this map, we know I want to highlight limited English proficiency, foreign-born 0 to 5, and being a renter or living in a multi-family unit address are going to be the big variables that are impacting this score. Well, we also know that because it's highly red, all of the 12 are very active in this region, which means we have to be very proactive on how we're going to tackle all this. To talk a little bit about our LARCT space, we do convene a significant amount of nonprofit organizations, CBOs, in Southeast LA. But because of the nature of our city boundaries, the nature of where our nonprofits are located, and just because we're really trying to convene the region, we also have the different municipalities, so such as Southgate, Commerce, Norwalk. These are different folks that join this space to talk about their own census outreach activities, in addition to the work that the CBOs are doing that include train the trainer models, promotora training campaigns, youth ambassador work, a mobile kiosk unit. So while we're coming to this table and everybody gets the opportunity to report out in the regional discussion component, that means we're also able to usher in a conversation on the gap analysis. So while we know what I may be doing for Hard to Count and my outreach activity and what geographic area I want to reach, when you're listening to this for 30 to 40 to 50 different voices, we can still build a common understanding of what are the additional efforts or the partners we need to engage with to make sure that as we move towards March, we are not only well prepared with census knowledge, but we're well informed on our regional strategy. So a lot of the work that we're doing is holding the space so that we understand the roles of not only the CBOs, our municipal partners, and different key players that I want to highlight to you, which include how do we continue to engage our non-CBO community, so our grassroots organizations and volunteer groups that are highly motivated because at the end of the day, they do know that these funding resources impact their daily lives, but how do we get them the resources in a timely manner and in a very accessible way? We also recognize that for the Southeast region, our faith-based organizations are another additional trusted messenger. We know that our schools are trusted messengers, so what does it mean to make sure that they are also in a timely manner, having the conversations, building that awareness to feel very comfortable when perhaps delivering a sermon or whatever outreach strategy they elect into. The last piece, because of the coordinating component, we're trying to figure out, are we collaborating, are we coordinating, are we cross-promoting, understanding which layer of those relationships are blossoming into, and how do we as a collaborative hold that space to connect people with the right agencies or the right players, or they have a question about CACs, we're connecting them with the City of LA or County of LA. Or if they're a partner that's active in Long Beach, making sure that they are connected with James or our partners in the San Fernando Valley and so on and so forth. That's a little bit about what I wanted to share with y'all today.
Thank you, Ms. Cortez. Let's begin the comments and questions with Senator Pan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentations and the work you're doing. And I appreciate the fact that it was recognized that the census work really is going on right now, right? I mean, we start counting in April, but the setting the social norms and building those relationships that will buffer us in case people, other counter messages may happen later on and so forth. And I appreciate that, Ms. Cortez touched on this. So when we look at the census, everything's divided by geography. We have census tracts, we have cities and counties, they all have boundaries and so forth. But for some communities, right, I mean, the community isn't a geographic one. It's not, maybe they may be in certain areas more than others, but they're spread out. Without actually interesting enough, the census data is what help us understand that, right? So, for example, the LGBT community, right? API communities, there may be certain places they concentrate, but they're also spread out. So when we're trying to figure out how to message, right? So I actually heard this from somebody. They said, well, appreciate what everyone's doing the census, but it's very geographic based, right? And that's not really working for my community because we're not all in one space. We're kind of scattered around. So what are we doing to be sure as we're touching the communities? And we are, census enumerators and people are going to specific geographies, but that we're cross-cutting, particularly for, smaller communities or communities that are less visible. How, in terms of reaching out to people that isn't just geography based, but they share certain culture or other characteristics or challenges in terms of fear of discrimination, other types of things, but they're more spread out. Can you maybe speak to that? What kind of work that? How are you trying to approach that?
So I'll briefly share and try to take us back to one clear site just for an illustration to my comments. I think that's a very critical point, and a lot of the convening has been geographic, but when we talk about really penetrating community and doing work, the first step was, even with geography, usually folks want to have meetings in downtown We're a 4,000 square mile county, and not everybody identifies as Los Angeles. And so the idea that James shared about regionalizing the effort so that communities could gather more locally around a region they at least identify with was a way to get more local. There's still beyond that, to your point, which is spot on. Other communities, other identities that cluster and do. If you look at some of our graph, you see that LA County has the largest Native American population in the country, but you wouldn't guess that because there's not a city that's majority Native American. But yet we have core partners that we funded, LGBTQ community. So the funding spread out. We convene a lot regionally, but I think there are also key leadership folks. African American communities is not South LA. It's up in Antelope Valley. It's dispersed across into Pomona and other areas. And so we have key organizations doing that work. It's just not convened in a geography. But yes, and part of our strategy, as you see in the graph, is making sure we cover that.
The other thing I would add to that question, which is really important, and I think when we dive into the complexity of how we're approaching, thinking about what does the strategy look like on a geography base versus population base, right? It comes down to a matter of tactics too, right? When we think about our door knocking strategies and as we're designing where are the areas we're targeting in terms of certain neighborhoods, that's great for specific hard to count areas. And the reality, at least for Long Beach, is that you have very dense areas that are hard to reach where it's a multitude of different hard to count populations, right? So we're talking about engaging partners like the United Cambodian Community, Interfaith Community Organization, where we could have teams of canvassers who speak Spanish and Khmer, because we don't know what's going to happen at the doors, right? But then on the other level, there's also this, as Efraim mentioned, relying on organizations that can reach population-based hard-to-count communities, right? To rely on kind of a network model where it's engaging organizations that have built a deep and wide membership and a base to really use that and encourage folks to reach out to the networks as well. So part of that and our challenge of convening is trying to hold these two kind of spaces at the same time, but it goes to show that the strategies that we're developing now have to take into consideration both populations.
One thing I really appreciate about the framework of hard to count or geographic reach or tactic is that when we're able to talk about what area we may be focusing in on, let's say if I'm reaching hard to count population, Latino, Spanish speaking, but somebody else is reaching the Hindu population, they know that as Cella region, we can cover the map and Spanish will do a good, go far. But when it comes to like other language pockets, they also are tapping into physically what are the locations folks are coming together at. So then you can do a physical, visible touch point with them. Another piece, though, is that when they're moving through geography, and maybe they see the banner or they see, hear about a training happening, it's how many times do we need to reinforce the message so that the goal is that they behave in a way that they fill out the form. Not, oh yeah, I know about the census, but I'm not too sure if I'm gonna do it. So we have to combine it. They have to see it consistently as they move. The minute they wake up to falling asleep, when they're on social media, opening up emails, visually it has to be a campaign. It could be physically in their neighborhoods, but also in the different spaces they engage with are people talking about it. So combining it is our way of kind of understanding that we need to get this message out there at least 10, 15, 20 times before it's like, yes, I'm gonna do it. So I'll say both strategies, knowing where folks are convening if they're a hard to count population, where are LGBTQ persons meeting, or if you're an agency that have multiple sites, are all of your sites echoing the same thing? So that it becomes something understood by everybody.
Well, thank you so much. So as we're trying to figure out the outreach, and I appreciate that you recognize this issue. And then I know you were in the room when I posed it to the other question. I'm not going to pose a question again as a comment. This is probably the time before we really get in, when the year starts, is start thinking about, and I'm sure you've done this and you have a lot of different, but again, just think about the people who aren't in our normal comfort zone and maybe should be around the table. Are we missing somebody? Who should we be trying to reach out to who aren't the people we usually work with, and say that and figure out, like, are there gaps there because of that? So appreciate that. Oh, you wanted to say something about that?
Yeah, I just want to add to, I think that like one of the things that we've talked about that we really, or at least saw, and the co-conveners that we've admired about the approach that the California Community Foundation has taken is when we think traditionally and talking about how we're engaging CBOs to do census outreach, we think of the organizations that honestly a lot were listed in the steering committee, right? These larger organizations that have capacity, right, and the skills to do this. One of the, because we understand the importance and what's at stake in this census count, our regional approach and sub-regional approach has allowed us to really engage those small grassroots organizations that may not even have staff, but they know people in the neighborhoods. They can host those block parties. We have a round of fiestas coming up in December, right, where we could actually engage people from the community and engage in that type of strategy and allow resources to share resources to allow them to participate and get rid of some of those barriers. So that's so important, and I just wanted to lift that up to emphasize the point you raised.
I appreciate that. As someone who who teaches asset-based community development, we talk about the power of associations, the informal networks, and right, and because many of them don't have staff, right? We're talking very informal, right? And so oftentimes they're not engaged because they're not in a directory, other types of things. But we need to figure out how to reach out to them because they can help out. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pan. Senator Gonzalez?
Yes, I think all my questions have been answered. This is just more of a comment. I'm really blessed to have both of these incredible people in my district, in Senate District 33, both Cynthia and James and Efrain. Thank you so much for your work, as well as Dr. Wilma Franco. I know she's here as well. And I just want to say on behalf of our residents, we're really proud because we know that we have a lot of work to do in the district that is going to be one of the most affected. So thank you all for your work very much.
If you need new wallpaper, I have plenty of signs that you can, and I have signs for everyone, so.
Senator Durazo?
Yes. Also, thank you all very much. I know Mr. Escobedo and others have been working on this for a few years and trying to put together way in advance the sort of the structure of the organizing of organizers and organizations. One thing, and I plan to ask also on the state level, that is visibly missing very much, and it would be a shame to be left out, is labor. Organized labor obviously has resources, and I don't mean just like dollars, but resources as far as an organization. Many organizations, they tend to have a high rate of activism. They tend to have a high rate of turnout with union members because they're engaged with an organization, as you find with other groups. So I'm curious to see at your level, the regional level, why that appears to be missing. It may not, but it appears to be missing.
So I appreciate that. I think that definitely one thing that's been good, the communication has been there at a larger, the LA Census regional table does meet at a macro level. So there's the regional meetings and they pipe into a larger meeting. I know that they frequently participate in that. What you're seeing on the regional is really the community-led part. I think we could do more. I think that having leadership now at the Complete Count Committee level with SEIU's presence there in Alma's piece could really be helpful in that. I know that in LA, we had initial coordinating and coordinating conversations with the LA County Federation of Labor, who was very helpful. They've been participants throughout. I think it's not reflected here in terms of who's been funded or not and who are the leads convening, but I think at this very stage, to Senator Pan's point about who's missing, as we really hear the starting gun go off, it'll be key. I will say both the county and the city, through the complete count, local complete count, have also been engaging and making sure to communicate with labor as well. But I think there's one more integration level needed to drop down, and I'm glad that you raised that and brought that up.
And I just add, because anyway, I just hope with the LA Federation that they're formally brought in, so many different unions, so many different so much of the geographical area. And I think if we don't do it early, it's a really, really very big missed opportunity.
And I will share that they have shared, whether at the tables or as we've met with them, that they were working on plans, and we're doing that, but I think now's the time to now bring them all together.
Mr. Escobedo, is there a simple way of describing how all of the efforts are being coordinated? I know that was a big part of a presentation I saw you give about a year or so ago. There's so many efforts. There's the cities, there's the counties, there's the school districts, there's community-based groups, there's those organized by one alliance, then there's the state effort. Is there a simple way of describing this, or is it just there's so much out there that we ought to be glad there's different groups?
Yes, it's the state gives us the money. No, I'm just kidding. It is, and one is you do see a lot of different tables, but what has been clearly defined amongst all of us and the partners very early on was what will the county and the cities focus on, and we seed and participate and support that. What will the steering committee, with the support of CCF, focus on, which was on the ground, the CBOs, we will seed that, so the county, the cities weren't out there actively trying to grant or fund. Philanthropy said the ACBO structures, what the state put in place, we will then pool all our money so that we're not having organizations write 7 different proposals with our own way of talking about the census. And so the simple way is we all identified the lanes needed, and everybody trusted each other to run those lanes. And today, as you see the different presentations, we kind of each are talking about our lanes, but we all communicate and coordinate. It does, though, however, look messy. And so, but it's working because everybody has their lanes, and we're doing that.
Thank you, Senator Durazo. Assemblymember Berman.
Quick question for Efrain. You mentioned that LA has had a lot of state support and also a lot of philanthropic support and is in a pretty good place right now at this stage of the game. Are there things that this region can share with other regions of the state that maybe don't have the resources, the private sector resources, and maybe didn't get us started as earlier as you all have? Is there any sort of mechanism for sharing kind of best practices with some of the other regions of the state? I know that you've got to focus on the hardest to count county, but any efforts are appreciated by some others that are maybe a little further behind.
Absolutely. So first I'll say I think we have had the state step up and philanthropy step up as well, but I will be honest that 100 organizations is a lot, but it's also not. What we have funded so far in the 12 million is a little bit less than half of what different organizations stepped up to offer. But I think we're in a good place than we were in any other time to meet this challenge. To your question about sharing best practices, one is every asset that we're developing is open and shareable with folks. The state has been working on sharing and communicating some of what we're doing, but we're also now working with them and thinking about how do we do that more formally, maybe right before we pass the starting line. But yes, any asset that's being developed, we're ready and eager to say, this website that we created for CBOs, all that content can be stripped, used, and white labeled.
Perfect. Appreciate it.
I think on that note too, I just want to add that when we think about, for us to think about like LA County as a whole, right? Again, the question of scale, it's been a really great, I often refer to it as like an interesting social experiment, like from that kind of level to think about us as organizations, as co-conveners, because the landscape in Long Beach is similar yet different than Stella, and it's very different from Antelope Valley, right? And so many other valleys. I live in Long Beach, I don't go to the other valleys. But our ability to come together and share how we're organizing and approaching the regions has informed so many other strategies of how we're being more cohesive as a region. And I think there's been other opportunities where each of us have been asked and are willing to share with other folks across the state in terms of how we're approaching and trying to understand what this regional convening looks like, but also what are these best strategies for resource sharing and collaborating and bringing folks together too.
Great.
And one thing I would add is by virtue of the census, we've been able to expand our network. So now it becomes, okay, I know based off of the list provided by CCF, you're being funded to do this work. I want to meet you. What does your work look like? What does your general day-to-day look like? And that allows us to build our capacity to be connected. So being able to build those relationships and not only share our understanding and strategies with the census allows us to think differently about coordination, because you could ask each other, what bandwidth do you have, or what resources can you offer? What may you not be able to do, but how do you want to be engaged? So it's opening up those dialogues that are critical as you move closer towards April.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Assemblymember Berman. A couple questions. Let me direct my question to you, Mr. Escobedo, and the other two of you can chime in when you think he's wrong. So,
That's going to be often.
So in Orange County Charitable Ventures, actually they engage in their own activity to raise additional sums. Are any of you engaged in that activity?
No.
From philanthropic sources?
You know, California Community Foundation, as a community foundation, we're Los Angeles County focused, so we are place-based. In the past and historically, we have been a resource and a partner to Orange County Community Foundation. So our level of engagement has been through any communication and coordination with them as sort of...
No, I mean, are you seeking sources from, for example, foundations themselves to augment your efforts?
We did, and we received a little bit over, I think we got up to 17.4 million, so about 10 million or 12 million in philanthropic resources.
Okay.
City.
And is that part of your mission to reach out?
Well, we set a goal early on, working with the steering committee and our partners, of what would be what we need. The real need was identified at 40 million. We said, let's start at 20. And so 20 has been our goal. And that's what we've engaged the state on, the city of LA, the county, and then philanthropy that stepped up with additional dollars.
So let me ask each of you, who's your boss, Mr. Escobedo?
Who's my boss?
Yes.
The community of Los Angeles.
But is there any one individual you view as your boss? Do you report to any one individual?
Antonia Hernandez, the president of our California Community Foundation.
All right. Mr. Suarza?
Who's my boss?
Yes.
My boss is Christine Pettit, our executive director.
All right. Ms. Cortez?
Formerly Dr. Wilma Franco, and the communities we serve.
Okay. And do you report to California, the Complete Count Committee, or Complete Count California?
We report and collaborate directly with the state Census Complete Count Office, and that's who we work with directly on a day-to-day and report on our contract activities and what we're doing on the ground with the resources.
Okay. And then same question I asked the previous panel in terms of metrics. One, do you have performance measures? And two, if you can just give me an example of one of your performance measures, sometimes referred to as metrics.
Yes. We will have a range of metrics in different areas. So, and Avianna, our partner at the county, shared a little bit about the media metrics. So those are, and we've communicated and shared a number of those with the state. There are, I'll give you an example. One metric for us was funding at least 100 organizations to do get out the count efforts. And so we've reached that. Now begins the work with USC of establishing metrics around how many people were contacted through these various activities, how many facilities were serving as questioner assistance centers on a media side, how much digital reach that we have, and if we have media partners, what was the measurable effect of that? And so we're working to establish those because we have the metrics. What we're working with the state on and have had a lot of great support from the SORT team is how will we collect those metrics?
What I'm interested in is, so for example, you have a performance measure. Our performance measure is we want to fund 100 different entities, right? And then the metric would be, how are you doing in terms of fund? It sounds like you've met that, but how are you doing? And so in other places, do you have, and I'm going to ask each of you, an example of a performance measure and how you're assessing whether you're meeting that performance measure?
So I would say yes, and keep with the example of the 100 organizations up on the screen you see, we had performance measures working with our community partners. We set what are the important tactics on Get Out the Count that we need to move our hard-to-count communities. And we have been measuring ourselves by how well have we done in supporting each of the key tactics. So up on the screen, you see these little icon infographics. That gives you broken down for the organizations we funded, how many cover the top 8 tactics that have been identified as effective for hard to count. So that's a concrete example of how we're measuring our progress so far. And right now it's been on getting resources out and making sure it's to the right things and in the right places.
Long Beach Forward, in terms of performance measures?
Sure. So some of our performance, a lot of it sits on direct outreach efforts and measuring the strength of our collaboration. So for instance, on the direct outreach piece, part of our role is Long Beach Forward in each of our different organizations that have gotten grants from CCF, which is the combination of funds. There are things like 50,000 hours of direct outreach, whether that's phone banking, whether that's door knocking, to different hard-to-count communities that are identified gaps based off who's being funded or who's doing what. So not only is it looking at the people who are already at the table, but what are the gaps that are identified, and are there other organizations that are trusted messengers?
Your performance measures 50,000 hours, and how are you doing on that?
We haven't started that. We're in the process of hiring people, so that way come January we can start door knocking. So the other examples would be a number of community events. So for instance, our organizations that you saw logos for earlier, we have a metric of between January and July meeting on a monthly basis, right? In fact, we're going to surpass that because people want to meet more often than just once a month to get a handle on all the coordination. And even things like community events, not just direct outreach in the community like a fiesta or a gathering, but also for stakeholders. One of our metrics was organizing a stakeholder meeting for decision makers that Long Beach Forward did 2 months ago. And we brought together representatives from your respective offices, from the city, from education to talk about what organizations are doing.
I see. Ms. Cortez?
So one of the ways we're looking at data is situating it back on the 2010 LRS scores. One of them is engage 50 nonprofit organizations in census outreach. That allows us to look at sub-metrics. We're looking at, well, to what extent are folks using our census event calendar put on by the CELA Collaborative. We can look at the back-end metrics, how many people are using the website, do they self-report, value added, are they able to coordinate with different
So have you set a goal for how many people are looking at the website?
Not a goal with that because it's in its pilot phase. We want to get at least 2-3 months of data in to set that baseline and then start to analyze what would be a reasonable goal and mobilize towards it.
Okay.
So some of the things are newer, but for us, we felt that the 50 CBOs is reasonable. Our network provides 12 already. And in moving through the LERCT convenings and just seeing at the different sign-in sheets and who's represented and who's not there, we believe that 50 is going to allow us the range we need across the 3 categories of outreach and hard-to-count population geographic. So that goal has allowed us to have conversations to develop sub-goals, like are all the 10 cities and 200 incorporated areas equally being reached? So it's a good anchor for us, but we're also committed to a learning feedback loop process.
And is Complete Count California, are they inquiring as to your metrics, your performance measures, and whether you're meeting them or not?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
So Complete Count California, that's the overarching organization as I understand it. Are they inquiring as to whether you're setting performance measures, whether you're setting, you're creating metrics, that kind of thing?
Yes, we've worked collaboratively with them as we've developed our implementation plan and have submitted our reports on the progress of that. We've also had meetings with the SWORD team to start thinking about how will you be collecting those metrics, what support do you need from the state with that. So we have been to some extent. I think that part of what our conversations are as far as how many people do you think that you can reach, we're at a stage where we don't want to limit ourselves and say we should pat ourselves on the back if we reach 1 million people, because the charge given to us by you all and the state was get everyone counted. And so as far as metrics, though, the state has been very supportive, and we've been reporting ongoing, and they give us feedback and share their expectations with us.
And I realize it's hard, so for example, some things are quantifiable, number of enumerators that you've hired, number of clicks, whatever it may be. It's much more challenging in this operation, one, because of the time span, but also because of the more amorphous nature. In business, you say, hey, our revenue goal is, $100, and we're at 90, so we need to earn another $10. Much easier. Okay, biggest challenges, just briefly, other than money, what's your biggest challenges, each of you? Biggest single challenge?
Other than the size of the county and the 2,000 hard-to-count tracks, I think Avianna mentioned this. It's really time, and this is not some amorphous challenge. It's real. It's ticking every day. I would have to say that the biggest challenge for us right now as organizations are starting to deploy their folks is just the continuous guidelines that the census puts out. We're beginning to feel like it's really discouraging to wanting to talk to someone about the census.
About the federal.
So the federal census has put out several guidelines that use words like it's federally prohibited to contact someone or talk to them about certain things. You can't make phone calls to people. We continue to use our own discretion on that, but I think the biggest challenge is just kind of the Bureau's start a focus on regulating how communities can talk to each other about the census, that we're concerned would be a challenge moving forward. Okay. And I think the other one, which the state legislature and governor are going to have been so right in doing this, was the passage of AB 1563 by Assemblymember Miguel Santiago and Gonzalez around creating a Census Bill of Rights in California to make sure that some powerful entity like our state government is ensuring our Californians that they do have rights and who can and can't participate. I think that will be very helpful to meet those challenges.
Well, that's most useful. And if you can provide us the specific challenges that are being posed by the federal government, that will help us, because I know Senator Pan will get it resolved. So, right. Yes.
Confident he will.
Right.
In terms of singular challenge, I think going back to this idea of scale, but also what Senator Durazo brought up around how do we neatly talk about what's going on, we just can't. And I think what has happened because of the effort of CCF and all of our convening organizations with the We Count campaign is that the CBO effort to reach hard-to-count communities is very well organized. But I can't say that for all of the other sectors where it hasn't been years of this kind of planning. And what we struggle with is trying to, in good faith, think about how do we collaborate and connect with other local levels of government, anchor institutions, our education, healthcare, labor right, all of these other sectors that just aren't in the same place where we are at in terms of our efforts and outreach, and recognizing that partnership moves at the speed of trust. And for some of these institutions, and particularly with our organizations, that trust isn't there. And unfortunately, we don't have time to build that trust, so it's really relying on people within different institutions to put a lot of trust up front. And I'm thankful for individuals like Julian Sanuda, Kevin Jackson here in the city of Long Beach who have understood that, to really think about how do we start breaking down these barriers.
Thanks. Ms. Cortez?
I think it's being able to expand who our partners are. One example in CELA is going to be our parent volunteer groups. So while we know that different institutions like LUSD are preparing to support those parents, when we talk to them on the ground, they say, we really want to have coffee and census talks. Concha and census has been one of the things they've brought to the table. But we know that also takes some resources. It maybe takes some trainings for them. Mm-hmm. So as we think about what are the best ways to engage, particularly those parent groups, one of the things that we were really excited about, and I'm going to follow up with our folks, our friends at the city and the county, LA City in the Goodwill Ambassador program not only was able to provide a volunteer stipend for folks getting trained, but is also offering a mini grant to hold an event in your community. So when we hear about things like that in the Southeast, we want to be able to learn how to replicate that, because that's what we're hearing from our parents, from our cousins, from our youth, trying to think about, well, we want to get active too, but what is the right infrastructure to support that desire and that work?
All righty, thank you. Last question, is your mother watching? Yeah.
No, but if she is, hi, Mommy.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your input. Thank you. Next panel. Reading, writing, counting, utilizing schools to increase participation. Los Angeles County Office of Education, Ms. Avianna Andrade. Also, Los Angeles Unified School District, Devora Navarra Reed, Chief Education and Litigation Counsel. And then Long Beach Unified School District, Quentin Brown, Program Administration. And once again, I'm still confident we can all read. So if there's anything you'd want to supplement, we're happy to receive it. So let me begin with Los Angeles County of Education, Ms. Viviana Andrade.
Good afternoon, honorable chairs and members of the committee. My name is Viviana Andrade. I'm the General Counsel for the Los Angeles County Office of Education, which is, of course, the largest county office in the state. I would like to acknowledge and thank the Governor's Office, the Senate and Assembly leadership for making local educational agency census outreach a budget priority. The trust that you placed in us and the investment that you have made is really critical to a positive outcome on the census. After all of the research unequivocally shows that schools and teachers are the trusted messengers. We all come from cultures where the words of la maestra or el maestro are held in high esteem. The money that's been allocated to what now amounts to 963 schools will be put to great use by the 43 funded hard-to-count school districts. So I'd like to speak to you about the efforts we have underway, but let me start first by addressing the curriculum. The census curriculum, Census 2020, Count Me In. It's been in process over the past several years. The purpose is to educate students and teachers on the historical importance of the census, its function, the use of data, the importance of the complete count, and advocacy projects. And I want to underline advocacy projects because I think that's really, really important. The curriculum was specifically designed, it was created by teachers, it was tested to align to California history, social science standards. It's short, it's concise, it's easily implemented, and it includes a taking action type approach to energize and to equip students to organize campaigns to also assist in getting out a complete count. And examples include student-developed posters, PSAs, brochures, assemblies, presentations to parents, and to their community groups. I say that those projects are really important because what's become really clear to us is that as we rolled out the census curriculum, we married it with LACO's outreach efforts. And in the past couple of months, we convened 116 educators in LA County. 22 came from the outreach-funded districts. And we had some teachers actually bring students to our convenings. And it was amazing when you saw the students and their interest and their absolute interest because they get it. And we know that kids, in large part, some of our students are going to play a very, very important part in the census, in working with their families, because after all, when we look at the role that students play historically, sometimes they've been translators and interpreters for our community. This time out, what's really fascinating is that those kids are tech savvy, they know how to do it, and as long as they have access to the internet and they have access to the resources, they're going to lead and help lead their parents in making sure that the census is completed. So as part of the curriculum that we have, it's really focused, and we're hoping that there will be school districts and some of the schools that will focus on having students play and continue to play that role, in part by perhaps sponsoring online video competitions or other creative type efforts aimed at students, because we understand they're the ones that are going to benefit ultimately from the census outreach. So let me talk a little bit about the outreach that we have underway. On December 3rd, earlier this month, we convened representatives from the 43 school districts, Virtually all of them were present, and those that were not present were present virtually. We anticipated the importance of having nonprofit partners present, so some of the people that came and spoke to you earlier today were at our convening, and it was a fabulous convening. We had nonprofits such as NALEO, we had nonprofits such as the Advancement Project. The other thing we did, which was absolutely critical, is that we used the resources from the California Community Foundation, and we provided a communications type training for the school districts that were there, thanks to the work of Fenton, which I have to tell you is absolutely fabulous. It's online, it's open sourced, and it really allows school districts to do the things that they need to do, which is to have ready resources in hand, ready to run, because really the outreach piece of this is going to come face to face, person to person, and allowing teachers and allowing educators to do that work, and the time to do that work is really critical, and not have it spent doing things like having to create separate documents, but to be able to share all the resources. So that was certainly the work that we were doing, and we're continuing to do that. We look forward to continuing to partner with all of the school districts.
Thank you, Ms. Andrade. Next, Los Angeles Unified School District, Ms. Reed.
Thank you so much, committee members. It's an honor to be part of this panel on behalf of LA Unified School District. For LA Unified and many school districts in the state, so much is at stake when it comes to serving our highest needs population. LA Unified is the largest school district in the state, as you may very well know, and we are very well positioned to reach a wide range of hard-to-count populations and leveraging the services and resources of our 1,322 schools and centers into activating them into census action kiosks and other activities in targeted areas where are hardest to count communities. The district has already incorporated a lot of the information for census into our We Are One LA Unified campaign. Much of our efforts this year and into next year, we are leveraging the We Are One LA Unified campaign into making it We Are One LA Unified, Make LA Unified Count. The district has over 60,000 employees, who we will leverage as our census messengers. We have embedded partners not only internally with our labor partners and associations. We have started engaging with our labor partners such as UTLA and SEIU in immigration efforts, and we will continue to do so for census efforts. The district has a lot of organizations within it, and we will leverage those as well. We have the Division of Adult and Career Education, which serves over 70,000 students annually in its programs. They have about 11 main adult education centers and over 140 satellite locations, which we will use for census action kiosks as well. We have the Beyond the Bell program, which provides before and after school programming. They are currently at 635 school sites, and they have about 5,400 part-time team members who have direct supports, who offer direct supports daily to parents and to students. Since the 0 to 5 age group is the most undercounted age group in the nation, LA Unified has a unique opportunity to reach those parents in our multiple early education programs. With over 13,000 children currently enrolled in our educational center programs, we will leverage our teachers and our early ed centers into census active section action kiosks as well. We also have our Parent Community Services branch, which focuses on family engagement, and we have about 500 family centers throughout the school district, which will be used for census information centers. And lastly, we have our students. And our students, I've heard the word used numerous times during this committee hearing as ambassadors. And our students are going to be our greatest ambassadors. I echo what Ms. Andrade said, that students are going to be the conduit to our families and to their extended families and communities. So we plan on engaging our students and having student-led efforts into the census. I just wanted to again thank this committee and also the legislature for recognizing that schools are the nucleus of a community, and we are the trusted partners in the community in infusing the resources into the schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Mr. Brown.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. Senator Umberg, Senator Pan, and Assembly Member Bergman, and other distinguished committee members. My name is Quentin Brown, and I work out of the Deputy Superintendent's Office, and I'm glad to be here to represent the Long Beach Unified School District efforts to this point. And I won't reiterate a lot of the things that I just heard. I'll just talk to you about just some of the activities that we've done. We are very proud to be co-chairs with the City of Long Beach. You heard from Mr. Jackson earlier. The first effort we did about a month ago is our superintendent put out a memo to all of our Long Beach Unified School District stakeholders. That touches over 200,000 people, just talking about the census, the importance, and if we don't count all the people in our particular city, then there will be certain cuts. So we're very transparent in the importance of that. We too plan to utilize our family resource centers to house some of the census kiosks, and we are targeting those hard to count communities in the city of Long Beach. We serve over 72,000 students in the district and over 80,000 employees, so we feel that we can touch the entire spectrum of the city of Long Beach. We have also started through our public information department. We've started social media blast, informing people about the census, where the kiosks will be located. Also, we will have, at every school site, we will have a place for parents and guardians and community members to actually come and do the questionnaires, take the census, and just have a place where they can get more information about the census and just have that, as my colleague said, that trusted partner in this effort. We also we met with a representative from the U.S. Census Bureau in regards to the Count Me In curriculum. So we have started working with our district curriculum leaders to develop additional lesson plans that we're going to kick off in the month of January that will touch all of our students, K through 12, in social sciences. We're going to also roll them out in our math classes, our science classes, and also our English classes as well. And let's see here. Of course, we're going to utilize some of the information at our PTA meetings, our parent forums. We touch a lot of people through Head Start. We're going to do some work with informing our parents through our education celebrations that we have throughout the district. And again, we're going to really utilize our students because, again, they are we feel like they're at the grassroots. They're going to go home and talk with their parents and tell them about the importance of the census. So we have started training all of our associated student bodies across the district and having them work in our particular schools and classrooms to also get the word out to parents. And we were part of the LACO Census 2020 convening last week, which I feel was very powerful and very informative, and so we were able to take some of that information back. So we feel like we're ready to go. Again, we have done some great work with Kevin and Julian Cernuto. I've heard his name a couple times. He's excellent, and we look forward to continuing the work so that we can count every person in the city of Long Beach. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'm going to turn the gavel over to my co-chair, Senator Pan, for just a few moments.
Okay, well, thank you so very much for your presentations. Chair Berman, I understand you want to lead off with the first question.
Yeah, that'd be great. And thank you so much for all the work that you're doing in the schools. I totally agree that our students are a maybe undervalued resource and trusted messenger for their families. As somebody else earlier mentioned, a captive audience, at least for the ones that show up. And so, real opportunity to educate them about the importance and have them spread that message. I don't know if you were here for the first panel. We talked a little bit about how we're falling short in terms of our enumerator recruitment and hiring. And when I think it was Ms. Reed was talking about adult ed. That made me realize that that could be a great potential resource for enumerators, and so would encourage you to let them know about the opportunities. I confirmed with my staff that enumerators do not have to be full time; they can work nights and weekends. So another resource could be substitute teachers. And folks who are just looking to make some extra money. Because we're falling short and need to get as creative as possible in reaching our enumerator recruitment goal. So thought those could be two potential pools of applicants. Thanks.
Okay, other questions? All right. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you so much for your work and really the role. And I know that Senator Durazo has been a big champion in the Capitol for involving schools with the census and being sure that you have the resources to make that happen. I guess the one question I would have for you is that and I know, for example, in Long Beach, it's actually the committee's co-chaired by both. It was mentioned by the LAUS, the school district. Sorry, I was saying Long Beach School District and also the city. So that's a great example of collaboration in terms of. Can you just touch maybe about how you're teaching the curriculum? I know that's something that we've pushed in the state and so forth. In terms of how the school district is interfacing with, let's say, some of the CBOs and stuff about language access and other types of things. So, and it's great. We're trying to come at people in lots of different directions, right? The kids are going to come home and tell them about it, right? They're going to see something out there. Hopefully, they're going to hear or read something about it. So just in terms of, obviously schools as centers of our communities, you interface a lot. You have parent-teacher organizations, you have community organizations all around the school. How your school districts tapping into sort of your networks of relationships that you have with the surrounding communities around your school, and then how that interfaces with the sort of the various committees that we've heard from here today? Can you just talk about that and how and of course and how the students, how you work with them, perhaps to plug in students who might want to be interested?
So one of the first things we did when we did our convening was to invite the nonprofit partners. But I have to say, I think sometimes it's a real challenge, not because the nonprofits are not willing, because they're there, they're ready, they're giving.
Right.
Sometimes it's really the education community that needs to figure out how best to use it. They may not have an infrastructure that's just ready to pull them in. So that for us, I think, is one of the challenges.
Okay.
And it is certainly a challenge, and one that we're continuing to work on and to try to bring as many partners as we can to the schools, so that they can link. I think we all recognize the importance of building communities and knitting this in the way that we can, so that there's no repetition, unnecessary repetition, that we're not reinventing the wheel every which way. But for us, I think that is a challenge. And I think earlier we heard the Long Beach person say the same thing. It's sort of trying to figure out how best to break in and to become partners. So for us, we certainly see that.
And I appreciate you acknowledging also that forming partnerships and creating the infrastructure is not something that just happens magically. It takes time and effort and resources. It's not something that, oftentimes people talk about community-based organizations like, oh, you do this work, can you, join our group? And they're like, okay, my calendar's full of, I got to go to this group, and then I got to do my real work, right? The one that I actually even get paid for. Maybe I get paid for, sometimes not. So I appreciate you recognizing that.
We are actually very fortunate at LA Unified School District to have very engaged and robust partnerships with a lot of our community-based organizations. It really began a couple years ago when we formed our We Are One LA Unified campaign, standing with immigrant families. And through that campaign, we have interfaced with many immigrant organizations, Chirla, Nichelson, and the California Community Foundation has been a great supporter of our We Are One LA Unified campaign. So it feels like as we enter into our census work and we're transitioning into our We Are One Make LA Unified Count campaign, it seems almost like a seamless transition. We are engaging with most of the same organizations in our census. Much of our partners who were from the previous panels, we've had meetings and part of that, as well as our partnership with LACO. At LA Unified, we are, as part of the legal office, looking into MOUs with CBOs and having them assist in our census outreach efforts as well. And that is one of the points that we will be leveraging and continue to leverage.
And I would like to echo that as well. When I first attended the meeting several months ago and saw the partners that were in there from the CBOs, those particular organizations are already in our school system. So we are already in alignment with them. And it's just, again, it's seamless. So we are on board, and they attend some of our events and vice versa. So we're working collaboratively with them.
Fantastic. No other questions? Okay, well, I think, no, I think everyone's done. So, all right, well, thank you so very much for your presentations and your very important work on census. So thank you. And
Thank you.
Pass it back to Senator Umberg.
All right, next panel. State and federal updates, bolstering local efforts and meeting recruitment needs. Ms. Didas Carigi and Yolanda Lascano. So, Ms. Cargi? Okay, so my performance measure for this whole exercise is getting pronunciations correct. So, right. Why don't we go ahead? And if Ms. Lascano is here, is Ms. Lascano here? She is here. Okay. All right.
Great. Well, good afternoon, honorable chairs and members. Thank you for the invitation to speak today. My name is Didas Katagi, and I'm the director of the California Complete Count Census 2020 office. We appreciate the ongoing collaboration and support of the legislature to ensure that California is ready to achieve our fair share of resources and representation in the decennial census. First of all, I want to just say how proud and amazed at the work of our partners that you've just all heard about. The integration of counties and cities, sectors, schools, community foundations that are weaving together to create this outreach coverage is what we need. I came back in 2017 hoping that we could harness the energy, creativity, and commitment of these partners across sectors, and I'm so relieved that these committed partners have come together to get it done. I do want to give a little shout out for some early thought leaders, Dorothea Park, who retired from LA County, and Dr. John DeBard of the California Advancement Project. You guys have seen in the past presentations talking about this LA regional table. You know, he and I started conversations back in 2017 of January when nobody was even talking about census. And so he's kind of one of those quiet leaders that really kind of thought about how does this all work? How do we make this sort of complex thing going on? He also had leadership within CPAN, the Census Policy Advocacy Network, who was instrumental in working with all of you on our funding. So I just want to say that these early folks planted seeds that have grown into a tremendous, powerful movement. So whether you started working on census in 2017, or if you're just coming to the table today by watching or participating in this hearing, please know that it won't just take one village. It's going to take all villages to get this done. And again, all efforts are welcome and all efforts are needed. The partners we've heard from today demonstrate why we are investing so heavily in our local ground game, because they know exactly where to invest and in order to educate and motivate the hardest to count Californians. As 2019 comes to end, or as we start our fourth quarter full court press, we're gearing up for January 2020. Our office and our contracted partners are getting ready to make a shift of our outreach focus from the motivate phase to the activate phase. And we're going to strategically move target audience toward the action of actually completing the questionnaire. However, as I look at the weeks to come and compare it to our efforts in 2000 and 2010, it is clear that we're facing barriers on two fronts, and that's how I classify them. The barriers are motivational and they're structural. When we overcome the motivational barriers, it means that people will want to fill out their questionnaire to help their families, their neighbors, their community. They'll trust that their information is confidential, and the state's invested millions in overcoming these motivational barriers. The structural barriers, however, are obstacles for how a person can participate in the census, and some of our panels touched on a little bit about that. These are operations and processes that are embedded in the federal government's administration of the census. These structural barriers lay solely in the hands of the U.S. Census Bureau. However, California as a state, as legislators, as policy, as partners, we need to be innovative and help mitigate the impact of these structural barriers. As the census, our office role is to provide a bridge between the Census Bureau and our local partners on the ground to facilitate communication, information sharing, and provide support, and to advocate for solutions that are innovative and meet the needs of our local jurisdictions. There are a number of structural barriers that our local partners have been identifying and bringing forth to the state and are asking for our assistance. But I'm just going to touch on one, and we can touch on others later in the Q&A. A structural barrier that if we don't help mitigate, we put our count at risk. And that, you guys have started to talk about, the most immediate is recruitment of enumerators. Hiring enumerators, and Yolanda will speak about those very real numbers that each and every one of our jurisdictions needs. With our unemployment rate being so low, the federal hiring process being so slow, and the lack of flexibility and creativity about how we meet those hiring goals, we are at a critical crossroads. Again, we want to motivate those to be counted, but if there are not enough enumerators to knock on doors, if people don't self-respond after May 1st hits, then we risk all of those being missed. We are committed at the state to partner with the Census Bureau. A couple things that we've been doing to help drive recruitment. We're doing job-related posts on our social media and our toolkits. We're highlighting them in our partner newsletters. Our census.ca.gov website includes information under new jobs resources. All our social media channels are pushing out the message. We're finding ways to integrate with other outreach works for key audience, such as seniors. We're doing work with seniors, college students. We're working with all our higher ed folks, and other groups who are well-positioned for Census Bureau employment positions. This also includes employment messaging with labor agency, employment development department, and other labor-focused agencies and departments for those reaching a possible employee pool like CalVet and departments of retirees and other adults. Also, regardless if our partners are getting funding to help with recruitment, I am hopeful that they'll realize the urgent need to help with this recruitment, regardless if they're getting funding. In closing, whether it is a structural barrier or a motivational barrier, no one single group or organization can achieve a complete count on their own. Coordinated, collaborative efforts will be critical to success, and we look forward to continuing down this path into our fourth quarter, or to mix metaphors, taking it across the goal line, with our partners, philanthropy, the legislature, the Census Bureau, and our other stakeholders to find solutions. Thank you for this time, and I'm available to answer additional questions.
Thank you, Ms. Caraghi. Next, Ms. Lascano.
Thank you for the opportunity. I want to just thank everyone sitting here today. I just saw all of the efforts that are made for the recruitment, again, from the state level, from the county level, from the city level, and all of the community-based organizations. We really cannot do this without you. As Dita said, it does take everyone to get a complete count. So I did kind of have a PowerPoint just to kind of speak on a little bit of progress of the Census Bureau and what we're doing. Turn it off. Okay. All right. So. Okay. If they don't bring, there we go. Okay. So it's just an update as far as the recruiting update for today. I just wanted to start off with California. So the California numbers, if you can see from the slide, we have over, I believe it's over 273,000. That's our goal, recruiting goal for the state of California. For California, we're at 40. Today, this was a number as of Monday, but as of today, we're at 44.5% of our recruiting goal. The goal for our California offices on the next slide, I will show you just what we're doing. We do have 30 offices that are located strategically in California, and that's to support all of our enumerators, all of our field work. Again, we have 3 offices in Central California. We've got 10 in Northern California, and we have about 17 offices specifically in the Southern California area. Because this meeting focused on Los Angeles County and Orange County, just wanted to bring up some of the numbers for Los Angeles County. About a little bit more over a week ago, we were at 38%. So as of today, and this is the updated number for today, is 41%. This, we put it together yesterday. So as you can see, it is slowly moving upward where we need to be. The other things for Orange County, it's over 17,000 recruits for that area. We're at 46.8%. So we're slowly moving up. And again, this slide was as yesterday. The numbers that I just spoke right now are what we're doing actually today. So we did look those up on where our progress is and where we're moving. The other slide that we're talking about is most people ask, what's our language goal? And if you've seen some of the community-based organizations, a lot of them on the Census Bureau website, they use the planning database. So again, with the geography, as we spoke about, each track with at least 5% of the population primary speaking a non-English language, and again, that's according to the planning database, they created a language recruiting goal for the Census Bureau's non-response follow-up operation. So the language recruiting goal in these tracks is equal to the percentage of population speaking that language multiplied by the non-response follow-up recruiting goal, or 1, or whichever is greater. And overall, we have goals for 38 different languages, and we have over 110,930 total applicants with a language skill. Next slide, we're going to talk about just our recruiting strategies. And again, you are part of that integral recruiting strategy, and that's reaching out to, again, as everybody mentions, is a higher education. We've targeted private companies. We've used warn lists when companies are going out to offer Census Bureau jobs. We work with a lot of the local job centers. With Goodwill, we're coordinating with companies and others to hire holiday season workers. So just as their jobs end, then our jobs will begin. We're engaging, again, partners to assist with the recruiting message. And you are our partners, and we are counting on you to get the word out about Census jobs. Tweet it, put it on your social media. But we need those trusted voices so that people can resonate with them and respond. The other thing we wanted to talk about, additional strategies, is we do have recruiting assistants. Those are our boots on the ground. Most of our recruiting assistants speak another language. Our partnership team is really an integral part in recruiting as well. We work hand in hand that reach out to all of the community-based organizations and the complete count committees, and they're very well versed and speak additional languages as well. We've increased and accelerated our paid advertisement, and nationally they're going to start a recruiting campaign of over $6 million to get the word out about census jobs and the census awareness. And then postcards. We've sent postcards directly to each household. In some counties that we were under the goal, we sent them to each and every household. Again, this is kind of a California map on where our advertisement strategies have been. The lightest color is 3 ads, which is the lowest count running in a county, and the darkest color is about 10 plus ads running in one place. And again, those include radio, social media, digital newspaper ads, mall billboards, and movie theaters. Again, we want to encourage everyone to apply. We can do a lot of work doing these advertisements, but if there's not a voice with it or a trusted person to kind of encourage people to apply for these census jobs, we need to kind of get that message across. Our hiring timeline. This information is available on our website. They did a very good job on putting all of the information on our 2020 Census Jobs website as far as hiring, timelines, And again, last but not least, how you can help. Again, we're encouraging you to get the word out. Right now, it's at the back burner of everyone's mind. We have 13 recruiting weeks left after this week. So right now, we have to instill a sense of urgency. This is coming, and this is coming very quickly. And it's great that we have volunteers, but we also want those volunteers as enumerators. Anyone that has a full-time job can do this part-time. It's a new census this time around. They're going to have an iPhone. They can do the work. It's a lot easier. And again, I will have my business card. We have some handouts. We've got some information. Everything is digital. A lot of partner resources on our website. Anything you can do to get the word out. I am available for questions. Again, my name is Yolanda Lascano. I put the contact information should you have any questions. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
So, thank you very much. Senator Durazo.
Thank you both very, very much. Since you provided, Ms. Lascano, the percentage or the total goal for enumerators that you want to hire per county, it seems, and maybe you can go back to where we're at currently, it seems this is really a time period that's very tight. So what are your thoughts about how to increase the number in such a short time period? If you could go back to that, that's one question. And then for both of you is, how would you gauge a more successful campaign to do the census? We know we're hard to count in our part, in California overall, but especially in this area. How would you gauge that we did better, we did where we should? I know we're looking for 100%, but how would you gauge it? Is there taking 2010 and adding a certain percentage, or what are we shooting for here?
So as far as numbers, again, they take into consideration of the workload. So the goals are established based on the workload, based on if the county has the area census office located or not, and also offer refusal rates that we've experienced. And those offer refusal rates vary between counties and offices. And that's kind of one of our biggest challenges right now because of the unemployment rate. And then also it's a different environment. Some of the younger people are not interested, and at that point, that's where we need a selling point. It's going to work a lot better one-on-one speaking to people or having the trusted voices share those messages, because if not, they're kind of just going to scroll through the job and look disinterested. But yes, those goals are based on, again, some of our unemployment rates, whether the county contains the office or not, office refusal rate, also that we've experienced in the hiring process.
All right, so I'm going to nerd out on you a little bit, and you can just stop me on this. So, I mean, there are many ways we're doing a lot of evaluation, because I know the senator's going to ask about that. We're looking at evaluation for at a macro level of how we're moving, attitudes. But really, the stuff that you're all going to look at is response rates. So if you really look at self-response rates versus when they do NERFU, the knocking on doors, where they get the 100%. Looking at how the U.S. Census Bureau nationally says they're going to target 60.5. Like they're expecting 60.5% of households to self-respond, meaning they do it online, they do it on the phone, what have you, that before May 1st, right? So for me, I don't know how fair that is, because we are facing a lot of unprecedented issues. So what I would look at is I break it down into time periods, because we're doing such data intensive work with our partners. And I would look at, you obviously have to look at census tracts geographically, that's how we're tracking it. We're looking at 2010 census tract rates for those dates. So let's just take the census tract that we're here in Long Beach, let's call it 00-1. We're gonna look at on April 1st, just take a date, where were they in 2010? In terms of their response rate, and where are they now in 2020. And we're doing that across the state, looking at comparing those. So we can get sort of a semi-real-time look, dashboard-wise, of how we're doing. So that's just one, like when you're talking about response rates. Now, in terms of metrics, I mean, how many questionnaire assistance centers did we establish? How many of them, how much usage did we get? How many touches did we get there? Because with questionnaire assistance centers, we're hoping that, you know, they're 100% in terms of completion versus like somebody just taking something at an event. We can look at schools using curriculum. Thank you for having a panel on the schools. It is so important. And schools takes a long time to get that moving and to change the curriculum. And for the first time, we have curriculum that's actually made by teachers and accepted for the California standards. Also looking at social media. I mean, that's the easiest hits. How many people are engaging? How many people are commenting? So those are just some of the things. I mean, you can get down to the census tract to see if this census tract 00.1 is at 11% response rate on April 1st, and they were at 28% last time around. We can track it for maybe a couple days to see if, because it's online, and then how to redeploy CELA, how to redeploy Long Beach Forward to say, hey, look at these census tracts, go do an event, set up a table, go to whatever the minister that's there, have them deploy immediately, and then see if that's going to change it. So that's what's different about this time around, whereas we're getting real-time feedback. But at the end of May 15th, we'll get a snapshot look at where those self-response rates are, and then the Census Bureau has to make up by going to all those, if we only get 50%, they got to knock on 50% more households to get those people counted.
Senator Gonzalez? Senator Pan?
Thank you, and I appreciate the challenges, especially in a good economy, which we do like. And I would point out that actually, the California economy actually has been consistently growing faster than the rest of the country for many years, and so I think it's testament to California policies and economic growth. But that's my little side comment. So the question I want to put.
Vaccination rate.
Well, it's also probably related to our vaccination rates, right? Okay, I'm not going there. So the question I have to ask for you, though, is that, so I know you're in Southern California, I'm up in Sacramento, and I've been trying to get people to talk about, working for the census to do enumeration, and I appreciate the discussion about that's a structural issue, because we don't have enough enumerators, we're not going to be able to get to as many people. Some of the feedback I get is, well, earlier on is that it took a long time for them to even hear. They won't hear anything, right? So they put in an application, they just don't hear anything, and then they start losing interest, and they're of course looking for other jobs and so forth. So hopefully, as we're getting closer to crunch time, that gap in time between sending an application and hearing something is closed and is more instantaneous. The other thing, though, I also hear is because we have a diverse state and we want a diverse set of enumerators. For example, unfortunately, communities of color, we have higher percentages of people who've had a history of incarceration or criminal record. And to what degree is that a barrier to them working for the census, right? They're looking for work, they want to do something. Maybe you can speak to that. My guess is that you're probably not going to hire anyone who doesn't have documentation. But that's another. But so what happens is we're taking out large chunks of people out of the pool. So I guess one of the things that I want maybe clarity is that who can apply? Who can be employed by the census to do this work? I mean, it's sometimes not clear, and I think there's a lot of stuff going around the community about that, and so people don't even want to try because they think they won't get a shot, and they're not. So I think that perhaps you can clarify, not in excruciating detail, given the fact we're hearing, you can provide some more in writing, but perhaps a broad stroke as to who really realistically has a decent chance of getting a job with the census if they take the time and effort of actually submitting an application.
Great. So the first thing is who can apply. Everyone can apply. But yes, there are some factors that may not make us filter down to a successful employee. What does that look like? When you apply online, we don't have background questions in the initial application. So those issues are handled on a case-by-case basis. So say somebody has something in their criminal background, we can't say this offense or this doesn't. They take a lot of factors into consideration, which could be the time period of which it happened, to the extent of whatever what the issue was. So those are handled by a case-by-case basis. So again, everyone can apply. When they're hired, the initial form that'll probably is the Declaration for Federal Employment. So the Declaration for Federal Employment is they do have to disclose that information, and if there's something that warrants additional information, this time around they are given about 60 days to respond to that.
Okay, let me push back a little bit on this. I appreciate you saying, well, everybody can apply. By the way, that includes undocumented people?
It includes,
I'm just
they can
being,
apply.
I'm
They
being
may not be
straight
eligible.
out, right?
Yeah,
Huh?
they can apply, but they may not be eligible. Now, they
No, but I mean, the things you can say, everyone's being applied, but for example, if they don't realistically have a chance of getting in, like they can't provide a social security number, then really the answer is no, they shouldn't. Right. So I guess, and then I get the idea that case by case basis, but the problem is the feedback I'm getting is that, and I realize there isn't like maybe sharp lines, probably that's what it's like, but some guidance is helpful because I think there are people who have said, well, I don't want to bother doing this because I don't think I have much of a chance, and I can go and tell them, well, everybody should apply, but you know, people talk to each other in the community, right? I'm trying to be if I'm going to be a trusted messenger, I got to be able to communicate to people about realistically, you know, if you got these offenses, you should definitely still go because there's a good chance they'll still hire you. If you're kind of got involved in something, let's say, you got a felony, probably not, because people don't want you knocking on their doors. So, I mean, I think some clear guidance may actually help to try to communicate. This is back to trusted messenger issues, right? The question is, can I be a trusted messenger? If I just go and say everybody can apply, I think my trusted part starts going down because I'm not being realistic and direct with them. And that's what I realize that perhaps in your official hat, you can't, but I mean, that's going to be important to be able to communicate to people, and particularly communities, and particularly communities we want to get enumerators from because they'll be best at reaching those communities, what kind of direction we can give them so as they're getting the word out that they can give people the straight answer so that they can still remain trusted.
Right, and those are eligibility questions that they're not going to give you finite answers for because, again, those are all reviewed on a case-by-case basis because there's so many factors to those. But yes, normally I would use the Declaration for Federal Employment as a guide. Anyone can Google that, and it'll ask background questions as far as if you're on probation. They go back 5 years. There's one question that goes 7 years. So that's the baseline that the federal government uses for jobs. So if you're giving that information, I would direct them to the Declaration for Federal Employment. That's available online. That's an Office of Personnel Management form.
And is that also available? I mean, do you put that? I mean, aside from having them to go find OMB, is that something that's on this?
It's on the Census Bureau's official website, which is census.gov. It's a hiring documents.
So it's part of the hiring document section.
Yeah, it's part of the hiring document because yes, those questions and those things will come into play at the point of hiring. When you first apply, those questions are not on the initial application, so it does happen at the point of hire. Now, there's some people that you may talk to, maybe they had something that happened a long time ago or when they were younger. And again, our message should be in the community-based organizations is to help them complete that information. So if there's feedback that's required, maybe those community-based organizations can help them complete the letter, help them clear up anything. There's a lot of issues. Sometimes it's erroneous information. We want to clear that up as well. So I think the follow-up, and again, the great job that the community-based organizations are doing will help people. But yes, the normal guide that most federal agencies use is that Declaration for Federal Employment. It's on the census.gov website under hiring documents, and anyone can Google the Declaration for Federal Employment. That'll at least give you the background questions that you're subject to so that you can be prepared for them.
Okay, thank you.
Assemblymember Berman.
Thank you very much. Two hopefully quick questions. The first is, so we had kind of macro level data on the percent of applicants that we have so far and what the goals are. Is there any kind of more micro level data in terms of trying to find bilingual speakers in certain languages and whether or not we're falling short in certain communities on some of the more specific skill sets that we're trying to get with folks that are applying to be enumerators? That's the first question. The second question is unrelated, so I'll stop there for now.
So the language goals, we do have a language goals set. For the most part, we've been meeting those, and I can go back to see if we can share those. So at least most of the language goals where we've said we're at 100%. So
Okay.
we are meeting our language goals.
Got it. Good to know. And then the second question has to do with kind of misinformation and disinformation, which has been a huge concern of mine on the election front, but also obviously that applies to the census front. And Senator Pan and I, Dr. Pan and I, participated in a meeting like a year and a half ago now, where we kind of we were scared straight about what could happen as we get up to Census Day. Where is there a process where people can go if they see things out in the community or on social media that they think are inaccurate in regards to the census, where they can report something and that information will get filtered up, and then maybe is there a plan to communicate with different social media platforms to make sure that they're pulling things down as quickly as possible if there's misinformation being spread on their platforms?
Currently, the Census Bureau headquarters, they do have a team that's looking at that, looking at social media, so any of the negative, they pretty much are on it to get those taken care of. But the phone numbers are listed there, and yes, that's the hard part, and it applies to jobs as well, because everyone that's Googling it, again, if you have like an 18-year, they Google everything.
Sure.
According to my son, I don't work for the Census Bureau because he Googled it and he called the wrong office, and I don't work there. But you have to be careful. I would say just send everyone to the official website, 2020census.gov, for information. There's numbers there. We have the toll-free jobs line that's on all of the information that they can be transferred to. We have to be careful with mirror sites. And they've applied, and it applied to census jobs. My son accidentally applied through Job Hat. Questions that we didn't have. It has the Census Bureau logo. So again, as much as possible, direct them to the official site. Make sure it has .gov at the end. Don't trust anything that says .com. But yes, Census Bureau does have some things in place in regards to things that will come up on social media that they can attack, direct, and remove if it's
Yeah, even beyond the whole jobs piece, though. Like, what if there's a video online that is a testimonial of somebody saying, "I opened the door to a census taker and ICE was with them," right? Is there something? Will there be? If I go to the census website, will there be a link or a drop down or anything that says, like, if you report misinformation that you saw?
I think there's rumors at census.gov that
Gotcha.
they can report it to.
Okay.
And then I know at national headquarters, working with Dana Boyd and they're actually coming up with a process nationally to track stuff. And we're wanting at the state to work with them because things that start in New Hampshire may seem innocuous, but and epidemiologically, we want to watch to see how it spreads.
For
and
sure.
You can see this, so we can inoculate in California against those messages. So.
Perfect. Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, we saw meddling in elections in like small, random South American countries before they meddled in our elections in 2016. I mean, we can anticipate that they're going to test things out in other communities before they
And March
scale it
3rd,
up.
we'll be able to see what they're doing with our primary as well.
Exactly. Great.
But we can find out exactly and provide that information to see if it's going to be on their website or if there's going to be a specific number for that.
Perfect. Senator Pond?
I should just follow up. And again, I appreciate all the work the Census Bureau is doing. I'm actually concerned when you said there are mirror sites to the census, okay? It's very easy to go .com versus .gov. So that's a really simple, straightforward thing to do. And if you can't, and I realize there are limits to what the federal government can do and the Census Bureau can do, but if you can't solve that problem of like taking down or getting people to pull down mirror sites or buying up the domain names for those, that's a really straightforward thing to do. And if you can't handle that, I'm literally worried about what happens when someone does something a lot more sophisticated than that. Okay, we're so short on jobs, and yet we can't keep people from landing on a mirror site because they type .com versus .gov. I mean, let's put it this way. Some of us are elected officials. We have to deal with campaigns. We know you buy every domain site if you can, if you have the resources. That gets around because you just don't want people basically tricking people into going somewhere else and then putting out misinformation about you. So I would say that if that's really going on, then that's your first test of what you can try to do with misinformation. If you can't get the
the IT community and all the other folks to help you and say, look, you know what, this is misinformation, and people who are applying for the census who are desperately trying to get are getting diverted and getting their, who knows if they're doing it because they're stealing the personal ID information, whatever reason they're doing it, and we can't shut those people down, then we have a big problem because we don't have, and you should be able to shut it down tomorrow, because that's about how fast you're going to have to work when April 1st hits, right? If it takes you a couple of weeks to shut something down like that, it's over. The game's over. The word's already out. It only takes a few days for something to go viral. And so I hope that we should be, that the people who are working on this stuff, they should use that perhaps as a test case of what they can try to do to mobilize the community to stop misinformation.
And they understand that. The ones for jobs, it's job boards like Job Hats. Those are the ones that are kind of a top because they say we have census jobs. And they've got clear disclaimers on that, but I'm sure the Census Bureau is working on that to make sure that it's safe and secure.
So as a follow-up, so what's the plan to get rid of those sites?
For the ones that we had, it was they were like Job Hats. What we had for the 2020 jobs, most people, for example, they buy the keywords like job hat, Indeed.com, because we do post on them for jobs. But sometimes those job boards also kind of gather the information on some of the applicants. So they've got a big campaign in place. We spent a lot of money on keywords to make sure that the Census Bureau is right on top as far as census jobs. So that kind of happened early on. But again, I'm talking about Job Hat, Indeed.com. Well, ultimately, they do take you to the Census Bureau website, but they're pretty much job boards.
Okay, so there's no more mirror sites, is that right?
No, there's no more mirror sites.
Oh, all right, that answers that question. A couple things. First of all, thank you both for being here. You both have significant challenges in different ways. Ms. Katagi, thank you for your responsiveness. We've asked many questions over the course of last year, and you've been very responsive. Thank you very much for that. Where are we in terms of metrics, in terms of enumerators in California? Where are we?
So for I think I gave the California number.
But in terms of where you expect to be, where are we?
We are at, for California, we are at 44.5%.
And what's the performance metric for this time of year?
We expect to be pretty close to 50%, so we're getting there. And again, this number changes every single day.
Right. So we're below where we expect to be, right? So what's the plan in February to accelerate that process?
We started accelerating our process now. Again, the Census Bureau put additional funding in for paid advertisement, increase the goal. They've increased our staffing, so we have additional recruiting assistants, additional boots on the ground.
How much have we increased our staffing here in California to meet our goal in the last?
California, I can get back to the actual number, but for our whole region, we've increased it by 200 to 300 recruiting assistants.
I see. Because 6.5 million nationwide is so small that it's infinitesimal. And I realize that you're not here because you're running the census for the country, but 6.5 million nationwide is a pebble in the Great Lake. So is there a plan? And if there's not a plan, will there be a plan? And will you let us know what that plan is? Because if we're behind by, say, 8% now, and turns out in February we're still behind, and there's no plan to accelerate recruitment, what happens?
So we've started now. Again, the national campaign is kicking in. Additionally to our regional efforts, we've got the national campaign going. They just started this week. So we've increased all of our recruiting efforts, all of our media buying.
Can you let us know in a month where if not you, maybe Ms. Katagi can let us know where you are in a month? And have you reached out to legislative offices? I see you've reached out to congressional offices. Have you reached out to legislative offices?
Our partnership team is the group that reaches out to legislative office to engage their support.
Right.
But yeah, we're reaching out in every level that we can. And again, there's national partnerships that are taking place as well.
I don't want to be sarcastic here, but I'm pretty sure no one's reached out to our office. I don't know about other members. Has anybody reached out to your offices from the federal government? Right. We'll find out, but just drawing from a
I'll take that
sample.
information back. Thank you.
Right. Right. So far as I know. And then lastly, Mr. Escobedo testified a little earlier about certain challenges. I asked him what his number one challenge was, and his number one challenge is, I can't remember exactly what he said, but something about the changing rigors, flexibility, whatever it may be, requirements. And if each of you could respond to his comment and what we do about it. So let me start with Ms. Katagi.
Thank you. So yes, Efrain was talking about, there was a 4-page guidance that came out about how can community-based groups help on the ground. And in that particular document, there were 2 references to it's against federal law to do phone banking or to call folks, robocalls, and it's against the law. I think it was to give a tablet at the door. And so our lawyers, as well as some other advocate lawyers, have been looking at that, and they cannot find we've asked for the federal law that it's against. And so that's where I think there's some angst, at least from our office, as well as a lot of our partners like Efrain, because you're giving us this guidance, but it's not staked in any law. And so that's part of it, is how do we interpret that? And so we're in the process of trying to ask our lawyers, how do we interpret it if there's nothing to interpret? I think that's where...
Has the AG's office been informed?
I'm not sure. I'll have to...
We probably should.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is last call for drinks or whether we're being kicked out, but the lights are going off and on. So let me just... I don't want to stop your response, but if you're finished, then we're going to turn to Ms. Lascano. What are your thoughts on Mr. Escobedo's testimony?
I don't know if I got his testimony because I did a step back, but can you just kind of give me
what he said was I asked him his biggest challenge, and what he said was his biggest challenge is that, and I'm paraphrasing now, is that requirements of the federal government, one, seem to be inconsistent with what they understand as standard practice. So, for example, making phone calls, and that they keep changing. So do you have any visibility on that?
So does that relate to our employees working with the census? Can you
That relates to, so for example, if I'm running a community-based organization and I want to make phone calls to people in the community, after April 10, I see that a certain precinct is not being responsive. So if I want to make phone calls to individuals in that precinct, according to, I guess, the latest guidance, that's a violation of federal law. However, that doesn't seem to be... There's at least ambiguity there. So do you have any comment on that?
I don't have any comment on that.
Right.
I'd have to check.
I think what we need to do is get that resolved, and maybe AG's office can help us get that resolved. So, okay, thank you very much. I'm most grateful. Let me thank the Senate and Assembly staffs that are here. I know it is a challenge to have hearings outside the state capitol, and I'm most grateful for your support, and also most grateful for the support of the City of Long Beach in providing us this facility and hosting. And I think with that, we will be adjourned for time being. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yes. You're right. So let me take public comment here. Right. So if you'd come up and you'd identify, if we could actually ask people to line up so I can just have some sort of visual as to those who wish to testify. And then if you could identify yourself, if you're with an organization, and where you live, that would be most useful. And I'm going to ask that we limit ourselves to 2 minutes each.
Thank you
All right.
very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. As I'm raising this. I'm Susie Lopez Guerra. I'm the Director of Community Relations for Santa Ana Unified School District. I'm also a resident of Santa Ana. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to state that Santa Ana Unified has been engaged in the census since 2017 with NALEO and LULAC, and it has been a part of our focus for the last year to ensure that we are supporting our community and ensuring that we're all counted. This year we have committed my staff, over 40 staff members, to be supporting the practice of family and community engagement, and through that, the active engagement with our families to make them aware of what the census is and how to support them. Today, as a matter of fact, I had over 40 of them receiving professional development with the Orange County Department of Education. And we've committed to ensuring that 57 of our wellness centers, one at each one of our schools, is going to be supporting not only information and professional development for staff, but information for the community. We are open to everyone in the community. One of the things that I wanted to state is that in September, the district, in collaboration with many of the complete count committees that we engage in, released our proclamation for the census and all the efforts that we're going to be committing to it. And I wanted to state one thing that has really concerned us in the past couple of weeks. In early November, we were granted the RFP for the county of Orange. However, about a week ago, we were sadly informed that along with the city of Santa Ana, our award letter had been rescinded. So I'm going to ask for your support in that because we're still committed. And one of the reasons that as a district we're asking for this is to ensure that all 57 centers are open after hours so that access to them, to all those other families who are probably working multiple jobs, have access to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Mai Phung Nguyen. I am here representing multiple organization and intersectionality. It's who I am. I'm an ambassador in that I am trilingual in Vietnamese, Spanish, and English. Dr. Pan knows me very well because I've served on the CMA for the Ethnic Medical Organization section as the vice chair. I wanted to speak to your multiple wonderful testimonial givers. There are three populations that I didn't hear as trusted messengers: physicians. Currently, I am a house call physicians to our elderly who do not speak English, mainly Latino and Vietnamese. It's a perfect opportunity. We need to outreach to our physician members, Dr. Pan, through the LACMA, LA County Medical Association, and OCMA. You need to put us to work, doctor. Lastly, it's huge about ethnic media. I did not hear proper appreciation of the power of ethnic media in Little Saigon, where I live in Fountain Valley, Senator UMBERG, your district. We have over 12 legacy newspapers, multiple radio and television, and not enough has been done there. I reached out here to Molly Nichols and the other folks. The other big issue is public charge. I come from an ethnic refugee migrant community. There's great distrust and fear that has been propagated by this number 45 administration, unless we acknowledge that. Lastly, I'm here as a member of an incredible CBO complete count. It's called OC Census Vietnamese. We have Latino and Vietnamese stakeholders. And we have been meeting for 3 months, and I only heard about this meeting last night at midnight on social media. So my plea to you is we are here, geared up, incredibly skillful and incredibly interconnected. Please give us adequate lead time, and we are here to partner with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Vigelav. I'm the Director of Policy and Advocacy with Chirlata Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles. First, let me start by thanking you for doing for your ongoing efforts to make sure that we reach to the hard-to-count communities, but also to your staff and the governor's staff that have had several conversations with us as it relates to what some of the best practices. For several years, we've been working in getting ready ourselves, but then also to advocate for resources, but there's also increased partnership with, for instance, with schools by sponsoring AB 666 with Assemblywoman Reyes that ensures that schools are part of the effort. Chirla seeks to leverage its presence in the Inland Empire, Orange County, LA County, and Tulare County to implement the census, and we want to partner with many organizations as well. But one of the things that we're noticing, one of the challenges is that the speed of resources that are getting to CBOs, as we gear up the field implementation, we want to make sure that the latest budget, the $27 million allocated for CBOs, actually get to the communities before January 1st, so that way the plans are fully implemented. But the second thing that I also want to highlight is the ongoing effort by the Trump administration to actually suppress the participation of the census. So one of the key aspects is the guidelines that were mentioned by Mr. Franco. Those are something that we're trying to really figure out in Washington, D.C. What's the purpose of it, given the fact that it actually contradicts different guidance that the U.S. Census released early on. And so we're really trying to figure out, and the fact that when we're trying to analyze with the statute, the federal statute, it does not make any sense as it relates to that. So I think one is through your office, the governor's office, but also through the AG's office to really push for clarification as it relates to that. Lastly, as we move forward on the holidays, one of the things that Chile seeks to do is to essentially do outreach in a cultural sensitive way. And so by using holidays, and that's something that we will reach out to your offices to try to get that help. And with that, we appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair Umberg, Chair Pan, and Chair Berman, and Senator Gonzalez. My name is Adeline Young. I am with Southern California Edison. I'm here to report that SCE has convened internal meetings about the census starting in September and created a formal complete count committee in November 2019 in close collaboration with the Secretary of State and the U.S. Census Bureau offices. Internally, we plan to reach out to our 12,500 plus employees by including census messaging in our various internal newsletters, digital screens, internal portal website, and department-wide meetings. Externally, we plan to reach our 15 million plus residents by including census messaging in bill inserts, bill onserts, external newsletters, interactive voice response system, low-income and energy program communications, social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and social networking events. We are also encouraging our other stakeholders, such as community-based organizations that we partner with, to educate their members about the census. SCE believes it is important that there is a complete count in the 2020 census. A written testimony that describes our outreach in more detail will be submitted after this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Sam Reeve from the nonprofit Community Connect Labs, which has been providing census technology to California counties for the past 2 years. We appreciate the state's robust funding to support Census 2020 outreach and, of course, your time today in this meeting. As we've heard today, census hiring in California is urgently behind. More census job applicants are still needed than can fit in the Staples Center, to continue the metaphor of today. Approximately 40,000 candidates in Los Angeles County, according to the data shared today, and tens of thousands more in California. California must act now to make sure that there are enough enumerators hired. Recruiting and helping get hired more qualified local candidates is potentially one of the highest impacts a community member can have, be they the government, an organization, or an individual, as each is tasked with counting 300 people in a community. Community Connect Labs, my organization, has developed our field staff recruiter with input from the Census Bureau to address hiring problems such as the long, opaque, and leaky federal hiring process, starting with the application that must be completed online in one sitting. The process includes additional asks such as an appointment for fingerprinting or submission of selective service information. The field staff recruiter is a mobile messaging solution tailored to engage and support candidates from local hard-to-count communities through the online application and hiring processes by providing brief training videos, automatically reminding candidates to complete the application, and updating them about the status of their application. It's easily distributed by statewide or by regional networks for schools, nonprofits, and government agencies. The field staff recruiter has already been piloted in California and Arizona with excellent results. CCL solution has interacted with over 1,000 participants, 49% of whom speak a second language, representing over 44 languages. In California, we partnered with the California Adult Education Program, or CAPE, and recruited more than 600 candidates through 20 of their CAPE schools. CAPE wants to work with us statewide, but we need more funding. We believe that appropriate tech tools can be a force multiplier for good. Technology can help remove or lessen many of the barriers to participation discussed in this meeting today. We believe that we should leverage this technology to make it as easy as possible for individuals across the state to apply for and follow through on applications for a census job. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Seeing no further public comment, I'll reiterate my thank you to the Assembly, Senate, and Long Beach staffs, and we are adjourned. Thank you.